With one blow of Split the Heavens, Long Chen killed not only the Blood Race expert but also cut the entire battlefield in two. All the Blood Race experts in the path of his attack were blown apart. As he killed, he activated an Essence Blood Gathering Formation disc made by Xiaqin. As he gathered the Essence Blood, he sensed their life energy not dissipating into thin air but actually being absorbed by the ground. The chains were absorbing that energy and sending it to the giant egg, nourishing little Snow. Sensing this, Long Chen thought of the person that had been slumbering within the depths of Devil Spirit Mountain. The heaven-flipping seal had been under its head, and Bao Buping had switched it out with a chamber pot to use as a pillow. Little Snow's giant egg was so terrifying, and that slumbering person was about the same. Long Chen suddenly felt a chill. He thought of the giant human skull bound by countless chains he had seen at the bottom of the immemorial path. He had only managed to see it thanks to the Eastern Wasteland Bell. Was that also a life form being nourished by countless other life forms? Just how many secrets were hidden within this world? How many horrifying schemes existed? Big Brother Long Chen, called out Dong Mingyu. Long Chen came out of his thoughts. The Blood Race experts were fleeing in every direction. Dong Mingyu and Luo Chuan were chasing them down, and now Long Chen also attacked. Working together, they were able to kill all of them. Let's go! The person they had saved recognized Luo Chuan. Long Chen gave him a medicinal pill to help him recover and also picked out a weapon he specialized in, a divine spear. The four of them rushed for an incense stick's worth of time and found someone who was on his dying breaths at the bottom of a mountain. He was already exhausted from being chased down by the Blood Race. However, he had managed to leave behind some fake tracks to draw the Blood Race away, while he hid within the mountain. His injuries were extremely severe. Even with the pill that Long Chen gave him, he barely recovered enough to keep himself alive. He wouldn't be able to help with the fighting for now. With one person carrying him, the five of them continued searching while ducking the Blood Race's experts. After 5 days, Luo Chuan managed to find 7 of the Blue Star Continent's experts. With their group growing, they stopped dodging the Blood Race's experts, and instead began hunting them down. That was because at this time, the Blood Race had also sensed something wrong. Too many of their members had been dying during this period, and there were various signs that the Blue Star Continent's experts were gathering. As a result, the Blood Race increased the scale of their hunt. However, the Yin-Yang world was too large. This original game of cat and mouse had become too bloody. Long Chen's group continued to hunt down the Blood Race's experts. Long Chen calculated that they had killed a few 100,000 elite experts, and now he had several vats of their essence blood, which belonged to the elites of the Blood Race with higher quality bloodlines, so more immemorial essence blood could be refined from it. The Blue Star Continent's experts were all very grateful to Long Chen. Upon learning that he came from a different world, they also transmitted their sect's strongest techniques to him. Their thinking was the same as Luo Chuan's. If they died, they hoped that someone would be able to use their techniques to kill more of the Blood Race. That would be their revenge and a way for the fallen members of their sect to also get some vengeance. Long Chen was impressed with them. After being saved, their first reaction had all been to save more people rather than to immediately flee back to the Blue Star Continent. As time passed, more of the Blood Race's experts gathered into large groups to search for them. As for Luo Chuan, he had managed to find more people, and their group had now grown to 19 members. Unfortunately, on the way, they had been noticed once by 2 large groups of the Blood Race. Combined, they had possessed hundreds of thousands of experts. In that battle, 3 of the Blue Star Continent's experts had fallen. That had been an extremely intense battle. There were tens of thousands of elites and hundreds of the Blood Race's top experts. Long Chen estimated that those few hundred were almost on the same level as the Golden Horned Blood expert he had slain in the opening battle. He guessed that they were all young kings of the Blood Race. At that time, Long Chen had killed 37 of them, only to be badly wounded himself. Fortunately, with Dong Mingyu's assistance, they managed to escape. Brother Long, we can't keep searching. There probably aren't any more survivors. The enemy is also wary. At this rate, we'll sooner or later be found by their full forces. The only good thing is that their 4th step Netherpassage experts still haven't come. We should prepare to use the world-crossing transportation formation art. Brother Long, you should leave. After they found a relatively safe place, Luo Chuan said that he could no longer sense any other auras of people from his continent. They had probably met their end. At this point, it would be a victory for them as long as they could leave the Yin-Yang world alive. But they would require a full day and night to activate the world-crossing art. That was far too long. At any time, the blood race might find them. Luo Chuan didn't want to implicate Long Chen. Hence, he indicated that Long Chen should leave now. If they could escape, then good. If they couldn't, then at least they could kill more of the blood race's experts. Long Chen shook his head. It won't even be half a day before you're found here. I know a bit about setting up formations, so perhaps I can help. What Long Chen knew about formations was all thanks to watching Xia Chen set up his formations. But he also had formation discs that Xia Chen had given him, and he knew how to use them. He could set up an illusory formation to hide them. A formation master wouldn't be tricked, but since the blood race wasn't familiar with their formation arts, there was definitely a chance of success. Long Chen found a mountain range and placed over 10 formation discs among them. He managed to set up an illusory formation, but if Xia Chen were to see what kind of clumsy formation Long Chen had set up with these formation discs, he might just cough up blood. I'll leave it like this. From a distance, Long Chen nodded. He didn't see any flaws. Big brother Long Chen, if we go back now, it should be easy, said Dong Mingyu. The blood race was busy searching for the Blue Star Continent's experts. Taking advantage of this timing would make it much easier. We can't leave yet. If Luo Chuan's transportation formation is interrupted, they'll all die here. Let's find a place to keep watch. Long Chen left with Dong Mingyu, leaving the Blue Star Continent's experts to set up their formation. He found a mountain top where he could still see his illusory formation but was still far away enough. This was the best spot. Dong Mingyu didn't say anything. Her bright eyes looked at Long Chen. What is it? Asked Long Chen. Dong Mingyu smiled and hugged his arm. Big brother Long Chen is definitely the kindest person in this world. I'm liking you more and more. I definitely like being liked by you, but what do you mean, kindness? It seems that in the entire Martial Heaven continent, there aren't many people who would use that word to describe me. Long Chen smiled. Amongst the Martial Heaven continent's experts, he was called a murderous, vicious, ruthless killer, not kind. Hee, that's because they can't see Big Brother Long Chen's good side. Would those fake heroes of the continent risk their lives to save people completely unrelated to them? Even Luo Chuan and the others don't know that you're planning on risking your life to increase their chances of getting away. Compared to those people who have to announce it every time they do something nice as if they're afraid others won't know how great they are, Big Brother Long Chen is the real hero. Dong Mingyu looked at Long Chen worshipfully. Long Chen rubbed her head. Seeing that pure smile of hers, he saw a hint of childish innocence. You're really beautiful. Dong Mingyu blushed happily. She hugged Long Chen's neck, murmuring, "Thank you for not turning your back on me." "Why would I do that?" asked Long Chen, startled. "Because my body will never grow up," whispered Dong Mingyu. "Foolish girl, how could I do such a thing? Amongst those big sisters, you're unique. You also have a unique spot in my heart." Long Chen leaned down and kissed Dong Mingyu on the forehead. That touched upon a soft spot in Dong Mingyu's heart. Long Chen and Dong Mingyu hid themselves. With Dong Mingyu's aura concealing art, the blood race's experts went by them several times without noticing. Whenever they went near the place where the Blue Star Continent's experts were hiding themselves, Long Chen's heart would clench. But fortunately, they didn't notice. Eventually, when he calculated that Luo Chuan and the others should be about to succeed, a group of thousands of blood race experts appeared and looked like they were going straight to the mountain range that the Blue Star Continent's experts had hidden themselves in. Their speed showed that they were starting to panic. If they charged directly over, then they might be able to notice some clues. My luck couldn't be this bad. Long Chen cursed and then stood. He suddenly rushed away with Dong Mingyu, drawing the attention of the blood race experts. They all turned and chased after them. As soon as Long Chen revealed himself and fled, all the blood race experts shot after him. At the same time, Countless attacks rained down on him. Pulling Dong Mingyu, Long Chen repeatedly dodged. Suddenly, a group of the Blood Race's elite troops appeared in his path. He changed direction, only to have another group block him before he got far. He was forced to go in another direction. More and more of the Blood Race's experts converged on them, but Long Chen continued to weave through them, not allowing them to surround him. Boom! Suddenly, a giant mountain in the distance exploded. Spatial energy converged into a giant portal. The Blood Race's experts were startled and hastily looked over. They saw Luo Chuan and the others in the air, surrounded by spatial runes. The void twisted around them as they had finished their transportation formation. Luo Chuan and the others shouted upon seeing Long Chen and Dong Mingyu being chased, but separated by space, their voices couldn't be heard. They knew that the two of them were winning time for them to get away. The Blood Race's experts immediately attacked Luo Chuan and the others, but before they could reach them, the void shuddered one final time and they vanished. Bastards! The Blood Race experts roared furiously. This game of cat and mouse had actually resulted in their prey getting away. You too let your comrades leave, so you can die in their place, roared one of the Blood Race's young kings. Long Chen sneered and grabbed Dong Mingyu. Lightning wings appeared on his back. We'll see if you have that ability. Like a bolt of lightning, Long Chen shot at the young king. Evil Moon appeared in his hand, and he sent that young king flying with a slash of his saber. Upon seeing Evil Moon and the lightning wings, the Blood Race experts let out alarmed cries. He's not from the Blue Star continent. He's from the Martial Heaven continent. Even as they cried out, Long Chen shot away, vanishing from sight. Dong Mingyu held onto Long Chen's back, almost flying off. Big Brother Long Chen's celestial lightning body blink and sundering lightning heavenly wings are so fast together that probably only Big Sister Cloud can keep up, said Dong Mingyu. Although there was an army of Blood Race chasing after them, she still felt safe with Long Chen. Long Chen smiled. When it came to this, he knew only Cloud could keep up with him. Of course, this was a skill mostly useful for running. Since he liked to fight directly, many people often forgot about this speed of his. You call Cloud Big Sister, and she calls you Big Sister too, said Long Chen curiously. Hee, isn't that nice? We're the youngest, so by calling each other Big Sister, we both feel a bit bigger. Dong Mingyu smiled brightly. Long Chen laughed. To be called Big Sister made them feel bigger. But what about when you called someone else Big Sister? Wouldn't that make you feel small? He didn't know how they calculated that. Sometimes Cloud and Dong Mingyu would say funny things accidentally due to how little experience they had with the rest of the world. Big Brother Long Chen, the Blood Race is probably going to block our path back, said Dong Mingyu. The Blood Race had to have their own communication methods. No matter how fast Long Chen was, he wouldn't be able to outrun the flow of information. Long Chen nodded. That's for sure. But we have to go back. It's been more days than I wanted to be out. Everyone else should be ready to break through to the Netherpassage realm, so we can't tarry. He had entered the Yin-Yang world only to see little snow and hadn't expected to encounter experts from another continent. Hence, this trip had used up quite a bit of time. However, that investment had come with its own returns. Those experts that he had saved had all given him their strongest techniques. Those techniques were priceless treasures. Many of the Martial Heaven continent's inheritances had been lost in the Dark Eras, but the Blue Star continent's techniques were still complete. Long Chen was preparing to pass these techniques to the Dragonblood warriors to strengthen them. Are you afraid? No, Dong Mingyu answered very directly. But because I'm with you. Even a mountain of blades and a sea of fire can be a wonderland if I am together with you. Dong Mingyu smiled innocently, making Long Chen emotional. He was her sky. Perhaps even in the eyes of the Dragonblood warriors, he was their everything. At the same time as he was grateful, he was also aware of just how heavy the burden on his shoulders was. His life did not just belong to him. That's right, as long as I'm here, no one can harm you. Long Chen smiled and suddenly raised an arm. He began to chant. A large flame lotus condensed within his hand. After that, flame energy gathered from every direction, causing the flame lotus to grow larger and larger. Long Chen's speed didn't drop even as the flame lotus grew to the size of a mountain. The surging flames made heaven and earth twist. You, hold on tight. I'm going to give the blood race and little Snow a present. A sinister smile appeared on Long Chen's face. Near the exit, in the area where the sovereigns couldn't reach, the giant army of the blood race had created layers and layers of blockades. Not even a drop of water could get past them. The 7 fourth step Netherpassage experts were all gathered. They had already received the news. Over 10 of the Blue Star Continent's experts had escaped, and the one who had released them was the Martial Heaven Continent's Long Chen. Hearing that it was Long Chen, they gnashed their teeth, especially the 3 of them that had tried to stop him from killing the golden-horned blood expert and failed. For Long Chen to dare to brazenly enter the Yin-Yang world at such a time was definitely an insult to the blood race. If he were to escape, all of the blood race's dignity would be lost. Practically half of the entire blood race's forces had gathered to block the exit. More and more of them continued to gather and report on Long Chen's movements. Just as they received word that Long Chen was rushing over in their direction, their expressions changed. A giant flame lotus had appeared, blazing with power fiercer than the sun. The flame lotus came flying toward them like a shooting star. Even from a great distance, their hair stood on end. When it got closer and only continued to grow in their vision, they realized just how minuscule they were in comparison to it. The sacred chanting ringing out was like an overture of death. If that flame lotus exploded amongst them, perhaps not even their bones would remain. The blood race's experts were petrified with terror, and even the 7 fourth step Netherpassage experts were too stunned to move. I, Long Chen, have come from afar. I didn't bring any good gifts, so I hope you don't mind this little expression of my sincerity. Long Chen laughed and suddenly pushed with his hand, sending the flame lotus hurling toward them. Terrified cries rang out, and the blood race's army instinctively fled in every direction. They felt that this flame lotus possessed the power to destroy heaven and earth. These elite warriors had sharp senses toward danger. They could not receive this attack no matter what. Don't panic. We'll handle it. The 4th step Netherpassage experts finally took action, sending out blood chains that wrapped around the flame lotus. Those blood chains instantly shattered. They had clearly underestimated the flame lotus's power. Shocked, the 4th step Netherpassage experts hastily switched tactics. From that one attempt, they realized that countless flame blades were whirling within the flame lotus which had broken their chains. Essence blood seals the heavens. Blood chi exploded out of the 4th step Netherpassage experts. Upon clapping their hands together, enormous blood giants appeared behind them. Life and death energy whirled within the 7 of them. They all reached out a hand at the same time, slamming those giant hands against the flame lotus. Boom! Heaven and earth shuddered. The 7 blood giants were forced back several steps by the flame lotus, trampling the blood race experts behind them. At the same time, the 7 4th step Netherpassage experts coughed up a mouthful of blood. A group of ants dares to utter such big words? This move of mine required Sovereign Mo Li to personally suppress it. As for the 7 of you? Long Chen laughed and formed a hand seal. Explode! Following Long Chen's shout, the flame lotus being held back by the 7 blood giants began to inflate. You want to detonate it? Keep dreaming! One of the 7 laughed, and the blood chains burst out of the 7 giants, wrapping up the flame lotus tightly. Working together, the 7 of them actually managed to seal the flame lotus. It shuddered inside but was unable to explode. Long Chen formed hand seals, controlling the flame lotus. He suddenly smiled. You're too naive. Just as he said this, a dagger stabbed through one of the 7's butts, causing that elder to let out a pained cry. That was Dong Mingyu. She had never chosen to target someone in that spot before. An assassin's goal was to kill the target in one blow. Stabbing the cruel dagger into someone's butt was definitely unprecedented in the Bloodkill Hall's history. This was naturally what Long Chen told her to do. These extremely terrifying old existences in control of samsara power had a sharp sense of danger. Even for an assassin, once they initiated a killing blow, it would definitely be sensed. However, What Long Chen wanted wasn't for Dong Mingyu to kill them. All he needed was the slightest distraction, and Dong Mingyu had done that. With the immense pain from being stabbed by the cruel dagger, that elder was distracted. He instinctively kicked behind him, only to kick thin air as Dong Mingyu had already vanished. His comrades shouted at him. That slight distraction was all it took for their control to be thrown out of balance. The flame lotus once more began to inflate. The 7 of them turned green and used all their power to suppress it. Regretfully for them, they were too late. The flame lotus exploded. Their blood giants instantly collapsed, and the 7 of them were sent flying. Other than the 7 of them, the other experts of the blood race had fled into the distance. They had only stopped when they were safe and the flame lotus had been stopped. But even at that distance, the flame lotus's explosion reached them. The world extermination flame lotus was the most powerful technique Long Chen had currently. However, it had its own fatal weakness, which was that it took too long to accumulate energy, so it was easily interrupted. The power of this flame lotus was on par with the one that Sovereign Emoli had suppressed. It was a 5-star flame lotus, Long Chen's current limit. At that time, Long Chen had wanted to use it to wipe out the sea demon race, but Sovereign Emoli had appeared and erased it. Even Long Chen had never gotten to experience just how powerful it was. Now he saw it. This attack broke all laws. Even as the laws tried to fuse back, they were broken once more. Everything within 100,000 miles was turned into a domain of death. Within this range, it didn't matter if it was the elites of the blood race. It didn't even matter if it was one of their young kings. They were all incinerated. Just at that moment, the void split open, and one old figure after another shot out. The 7 4th-step Netherpassage experts were badly burned and covered in blood. As soon as they came out, they looked around only to see the blood race experts standing outside a giant hole like statues. If they had been within the radius of the explosion, they would have forever vanished from this world. Bastards, where do you think you're going? Suddenly, one of the 7 of them roared because he noticed 2 figures rushing away within the twisting space. Boom. The elder sent a giant fist image smashing into the 2 of them. Those 2 wretched figures were Long Chen and Dong Mingyu. After detonating the world extermination flame lotus, Long Chen had used Huolong's power to block a portion of its explosive power, but even then, he had received quite the blow. Furthermore, for Dong Mingyu, he could only receive it head-on. Although the world extermination flame lotus was his technique, when it was released, it didn't differentiate between friend or foe. Even with Huolong blocking a portion of it, Long Chen's bones had been shattered. Dong Mingyu had activated the aura-concealing art to help them escape at this time, and if it was during an ordinary time, perhaps they might have escaped right under the eyes of the 4th-step Netherpassage experts. However, those Netherpassage experts were actively searching for them, so they quickly noticed the spatial fluctuations. That elder's attack instantly exposed them. Run! Lightning wings appeared on Long Chen's back, and they sped away. At the same time, another flame lotus appeared in his hand, and he sent it flying toward the elders. There's another one? The blood race's experts were horrified. That flame lotus was definitely much smaller than the first, but it still terrified them. No, it's a fake. One of the 7 elders noticed something wrong and smashed it apart with his fist. It exploded, only unleashing a wave of weak flames. The other 4th-step Netherpassage experts were humiliated at their fear and charged after him. Die! Seeing that Long Chen was already too close to the martial heaven continent for them to block his path, they unleashed attacks. 7 giant hands slammed toward Long Chen. If struck, not even 10,000 lives would be enough for Long Chen and Dong Mingyu. Boom! The giant hands slammed down upon Long Chen and Dong Mingyu. The earth exploded from the impact. The blood race's experts cheered, but then their voices were cut off as if severed by a blade. In the distance, lights flickered. Long Chen and Dong Mingyu's figures reappeared. How is that possible? Are they ghosts? Why didn't they die? The blood race's experts were dumbfounded. They had clearly seen the 2 of them being struck. That was close. Long Chen took a deep breath, wiping off some sweat. That really had been dangerous. Dong Mingyu was also pale. While holding on to Long Chen just now, she had really thought that they were about to die. A formation disc beneath Long Chen's feet shattered. This formation disc was used for short-distance instant transportation formations. Upon entering the Yin-Yang world, Long Chen had set up a dozen of these discs that were linked to each other. Upon stepping onto one, he would be instantly transported to the next. The range of such formation discs was not very long, but the good thing was that it could be activated in an instant. Just as the blood races experts had thought that those two had been struck by the giant hands, Long Chen had managed to reach the location of the first formation disc. Activating it, he had teleported just as the hands slammed down on him. He had been a hair's breadth from dying. Damn it! One of the fourth-step Netherpassage experts furiously unleashed a giant blood sword. Don't! His comrades shouted at him, holding him back. Long Chen had calculated his position perfectly. His current position was within the range of the Sovereign's will. If they attacked, it would trigger a counterattack from the Sovereign's will. Then all of them might be killed. The elder stopped. He could only furiously glare at Long Chen as he left. No need to send me off. I'll definitely return. Long Chen arrogantly laughed at them. The blood races experts gnashed their teeth furiously. One of the young kings roared, "Despicable human, we'll let you be arrogant for a few more days. Once your damn ghosts will fades, we'll slaughter you all." Long Chen didn't reply. He and Dong Mingyu went through the exit. They saw that a large group of experts had gathered on the other side. Most likely, the large movements on this side had alarmed the Heavenly Dragon Legion. Suddenly, Long Chen's expression changed. With a shout, Evil Moon slashed toward the earth. The earth exploded and a figure flew out, attacking Dong Mingyu with a sword. Boom! Long Chen blocked with Evil Moon and sparks flew. Long Chen's arms shook, and Evil Moon almost escaped his hold. This expert was incredibly powerful. Long Chen staggered back. That person was wrapped in a black cloak. His black sword was like a specter, and after knocking back Long Chen, he once more attacked Dong Mingyu. Space froze. Dong Mingyu was locked down by her opponent's killing intent. She raised the cruel dagger, only to be sent flying as well. Her arm had been shattered. That person seemed to have come for Dong Mingyu. He followed up, appearing beside Dong Mingyu and sending his sword slashing toward Dong Mingyu's neck. Long Chen appeared in front of the sword, holding Dong Mingyu. The sword landed, and he felt the bones in his back shatter. However, at that critical moment, Long Chen had taken out the heaven-flipping seal to protect his back. The sword had landed on the heaven-flipping seal, or Long Chen would have been cut in two. Even with the heaven-flipping seal, Long Chen felt like his body was going to break apart. This person's power was terrifying, and he was so fast that there was no time for Long Chen to do anything but use the most basic and clumsiest way to save Dong Mingyu. Long Chen and Dong Mingyu tumbled back, with the heaven-flipping seal growing larger and slamming into that person. Boom! The heaven-flipping seal was sent flying. Even it was unable to stop this person's footsteps. Waves of divine light surged out of the sword as it once more slashed down. Yi Benchang. Long Chen suddenly let out a shout and glared at that person. Although he wore a cloak and even had a sinister mask on, his eyes weren't covered. When their eyes met, that person's sword slanted down slightly, while Long Chen sent Evil Moon rushing forward toward his opponent's head. It was a sudden suicidal exchange. Long Chen concentrated all his power into Evil Moon. As long as he stabbed it into his opponent's head, then even with that mask's protection, Long Chen was confident his head would explode. Considering how long Evil Moon was, although Long Chen's piercing strike was unleashed second, due to the slightest sluggishness from when Long Chen had shouted at him, his opponent's sword would only land at the same time as Long Chen's saber pierced his head. The mysterious expert snorted and didn't continue slashing. He directly smashed the hilt of his sword into Evil Moon. Long Chen was sent flying once more, hacking up blood containing his shattered organs. Who's there? At this time, the Heavenly Dragon Legion's people recognized Long Chen and charged over, unleashing rays of sword chi at the mysterious expert. The mysterious expert was already rushing over to Dong Mingyu, but he didn't have a chance to attack again. He raised his sword at an angle, shattering the attacks raining down on him. His figure twisted, and before the Heavenly Dragon Legion could surround him, he shot away, vanishing from sight. Big Brother Longchen, are you all right? Dong Mingyu rushed over to Longchen. One of her arms was still gone and she was covered in blood. As for Longchen, he could barely sit up. The Heavenly Dragon Legion's warriors were shocked. Longchen's combat power had left a deep impression on them, while Dong Mingyu was a terrifying assassin. What person could force them into such a desperate state? In the distance, the Blood Race's experts simply stared in dumbfounded silence, not understanding what was going on. Longchen had managed to escape their blockade but was almost killed upon reaching his own territory. Longchen's bones creaked. He circulated the primal chaos space's energy to recover a bit. Only then could he stand. He cupped his fists at everyone. Many thanks for your help. Without your assistance, I'd probably have died today. I'll remember this favor. Longchen's words were sincere. Without the Heavenly Dragon Legion here, he and Dong Mingyu would have died. That mysterious expert was too powerful. Longchen, who was that person? You shouted that it was Commander Yi Benchang, but are you sure? Asked one of them. Longchen shook his head. Actually, it was just a blind guess. I've only fought with one expert on that level, and it was Yi Benchang. But that person didn't react to my guess, so it's probably not him. Dong Mingyu looked at Longchen. Longchen silently tightened his hold on her hand, indicating that she should be silent. That person nodded. He really was powerful. But based on his techniques, he shouldn't be Commander Yi Benchang. We've seen him fight, and his fighting style is different from the insidious, concentrated power that person showed. That person seems more like an assassin, and he was targeting this young lady. He was more like someone from the Bloodkill Hall. That's very possible. In any case, you've saved our lives. I won't bother saying extra words. I'll remember this, promised Longchen. All right then. We'll escort you. You're still injured, so it's best to be careful, said that person. Longchen didn't decline. They sent out a 500-member squad to protect Longchen on his way back to the cloud, chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's nest. When Longchen was back, everyone was shocked. When the Dragonblood warriors heard that he had been ambushed, they were infuriated. Who was that person? Asked Chu Yao as she and Lu Ruyan helped heal Longchen and Dong Mingyu's wounds. It was definitely Yi Benchang, said Longchen. Didn't the Heavenly Dragon Legion's warriors say that it wasn't him? The Divine Family's people must have seen him fight before and be familiar with his fighting style. Would they lie about this? Asked Chu Yao. No, they weren't covering up for Yi Benchang. They also couldn't be colluding with Yi Benchang, or they wouldn't have saved us at that critical time. Then, what are you saying? The reason I'm sure it's Yi Benchang isn't because of his aura or his fighting style, it's from the intuition of the 9-star Hegemon body art. His disguise was perfect. Even his eyes were different. They seemed dark and wise, completely different from his normal idiotic appearance. It's because my 9-star Hegemon body art told me that he was Yi Benchang that I shouted his name. When I did, he clearly reacted ever so slightly, so I'm sure it was Yi Benchang. Longchen had absolute confidence in the 9-star Hegemon body art. Yi Benchang might be able to fool anyone else, but he couldn't fool the spiritual perception of the 9-star Hegemon body art. If it really was Yi Benchang, why would he attack Yuer and not Boss directly? Asked Gu Yang. Meng Qi was the one who answered. Longchen would fight back if the assassin targeted him directly, and he wouldn't be able to kill him within a few moves. But by attacking Yuer and forcing Longchen to save her, he managed to have control over the initiative. Those who know Longchen all know that he would go save Yuer. It's the smartest tactic. How despicable, said Guoran hatefully. Most importantly, he didn't leave behind any proof. Even if Longchen is sure, it's not possible to confront Yi Benchang. We can only swallow this loss, sighed Meng Qi. Gu Yang and the others' expressions were ugly. This loss was difficult to swallow. Longchen had entered the Yin-Yang world, and even the Blood Race's huge army and fourth-step Netherpassage experts hadn't been able to stop him. But he had almost died to Yi Benchang. I'll remember this debt. I'll make sure it's repaid along with its interest when the time comes, but we'll set it aside for now. How is the situation on the continent? asked Long Chen. He had been in the yin-yang world the past few days, so he didn't know the actual information. The various powers are all silent, and the talented junior generation has vanished. They're all in seclusion. They don't announce when they're going to break through to the Netherpassage realm, but from the news we've received from the Xiantian Dao sect and the Heaven-Splitting Battle sect, the majority of their disciples are currently attacking the Netherpassage realm. The day after you entered the yin-yang world, Yilingshan also started her breakthrough, said Meng Qi. Long Chen nodded. In comparison to the geniuses of the other powers, the righteous path is a level weaker. If the righteous path's experts are only starting their breakthrough attempt, then the others probably started earlier. Alright then, today, everyone go rest. Tomorrow, we will collectively attack the Netherpassage realm. Everyone let out a cheer. They had been waiting for this. Just the day before, the final Dragonblood warrior had touched the barrier. Everyone wanted to advance right now. Only upon advancing to the Netherpassage realm would the immemorial essence blood have any use. They also saw just how powerful experts with awakened spirit blood were. Long Chen, you and Yuer are still recovering. You might not be ready by tomorrow, said Chu Yao. Long Chen smiled. Not a problem. This breakthrough will only require our Yuan spirits to enter the Netherworld. As long as our Yuan spirits aren't injured, it's not a problem. Long Chen's body had received heavy injuries, but his soul was fine. Moreover, he also wished to urgently break through. He couldn't get left behind. Only once he broke through would he be able to settle things with Yi Bencheng. To be safe, that very day, Long Chen brought all the Dragonblood warriors into the wild world. He warned the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race to be safe. If any powerful experts attacked, they had set up a way for them to run. Long Chen didn't want anyone to attack them while they were attacking the Netherpassage realm. If the Dragonblood warriors' bodies were killed while their souls roamed the Netherworld, they wouldn't be able to return. From the wild world, they traveled to the skyscraping world, reuniting with Yu Shaoqian. Yu Shihan opened up the skyscraping world's most well-hidden ancestral spirit land for them. Brothers, let's start. Once everyone was gathered, Long Chen took a deep breath, closing his eyes with everyone else. Long Chen reached out and pressed his hands against the back of Meng Qi and Chu Yao's heads. The two of them then spread their hands to touch Tang Wan'er, Yi Zhiqiu, Lu Ruyan, and Dong Mingye's heads. The four of them then touched Gu Yang, Xiaochen, Guoran, and the others' heads. Like this, everyone was connected. Even Cloud and Lu Ruyan were within their link. This advancement required sending their Yuan spirits into the Netherworld. All their cultivation bases were at the same level. However, they couldn't enter the Netherworld the same way the old man had brought Long Chen with him. Other than Wild, everyone in the Dragonblood Legion had come. As for Wild, his path couldn't even be called cultivation. His advancements didn't have any realms. Moreover, even Lu Ruyan had to make this advancement before reaching higher realms. This indicated that Wild was truly different. Everyone's foreheads lit up as miniature versions of them came out. Those were their Yuan spirits. All their Yuan spirits were shining. Spiritual links tied them together, with all their Yuan spirit energy pouring toward Long Chen. Long Chen's Yuan spirit rumbled and boomed. Even with how powerful his Yuan spirit was, joining with so many Yuan spirits was extremely taxing. This action would definitely be considered fantasy to the outside world. With so many people linked, if any one of them wanted Long Chen's life, they could kill him and everyone else. There were cases where people would make their breakthrough together. But it required absolute trust, as well as a certain agreeability between their Yuan spirits. Even then, such a collective breakthrough could not possibly have more than 5 people together. Long Chen had underestimated the difficulty of what he was doing. Even though the spiritual agreement between the Dragonblood warriors was very high, linking with so many Yuan spirits was extremely difficult. If his Yuan spirit wasn't extremely powerful, he would have been crushed. The preparations are complete. Let's go. Long Chen's Yuan spirit formed hand seals. After that, space shuddered and all the Dragonblood warriors' Yuan spirits became engulfed in death energy. To attack the Netherpassage realm required having the Yuan spirit go through death. This was a kind of suicide. If you hadn't comprehended life and death before going through with this step, there would be no rebirth, only death. Only upon touching the barrier and comprehending life and death was it possible to grasp the slightest chance of life upon dying to enter the Netherworld. Long Chen and everyone's Yuan spirits vanished. Their bodies slowly collapsed to the ground like lifeless, empty husks. Darkness. Endless darkness. Within that endless darkness, there was no sense of time or space. There was only an icy coldness. Eventually, they saw a gate within the endless darkness. Only when they saw the gate did Long Chen and the others sense their own existence. Did we end up actually dying? Guoran looked at his body strangely. He clenched and unclenched his fists. His body had clearly been left in the skyscraping world. However, he felt this body to be his. Even his clothes were the same, every mark on his skin was the same. But then he clearly remembered his Yuan spirit leaving his body. Then why don't you try looking for your astral space? If you do end up finding it, that would mean that we really died, said Long Chen, his expression changing. Everyone checked their astral spaces. Upon finding that they were still there, they were horrified. Ah, Long Chen suddenly laughed, causing everyone to realize he was just scaring them. Tang Wan'er angrily grabbed his neck. How is this the time for jokes? Hee, isn't it because everyone's too serious? A joke can adjust the mood, said Long Chen. Everyone walked through the gate. The world ahead was a world of mist, and the path beneath them was made of ancient bricks. It stretched off into the void. They curiously examined this world. Gu Yang asked, "Boss, is this the Netherworld? It's not as frightening as I thought it would be." Through the mist, they vaguely saw what seemed to be buildings. It wasn't a land of death as they had imagined. This is just the entrance. The terror comes later, boom. Even before he finished speaking, the void not far from them split open. A giant gate appeared there as well. A giant figure came crawling out. It was a bestial figure, hundreds of meters tall, with strong arms and legs. A burst of blood chi blasted them in the face. What kind of creature is that? Boom. When that thing looked around and saw Long Chen's group, it snorted and bounced away, quickly vanishing from sight. Everyone looked at each other. Was that someone else attacking the Netherpassage realm? Suddenly, the void split open again. A tiny gate appeared, and from it came a rabbit. Or rabbit? Everyone stared oddly. The rabbit was only a foot tall. Its body was snow-white, and its ears were raised in high alert. When it saw Long Chen and the others, it instantly vanished. The Dragon Blood warriors jumped in alarm. That rabbit was so fast that they didn't even see in which direction it went. The void split open once more. A giant gate appeared, and from it came out a 30-meter-tall earthen dragon. It was covered in spikes that gave off a cold glint, and there was a blood-colored horn on its head that looked especially powerful. The earthen dragon didn't even look at Long Chen's group. It just walked off. After that, another figure appeared. It was a slender woman in emerald robes. She was very beautiful, but she had 2 antennas coming out of her forehead, which was odd. "Miss Beautiful Lady, may I ask dash?" Guoran stepped forward to greet her, only for those antennas to flash. Then a strange force sent him flying back. It was like he had been struck by a wall, and he almost coughed up blood. When he furiously got up to demand what her problem was, she had already vanished. You shouldn't get angry. She was pretty merciful. This is the Netherworld, and creatures from all kinds of worlds must pass through here. Other than ourselves, we can't trust anyone. For you to suddenly get closer to her, she was naturally wary. To not kill you shows that she's pretty kind, said Long Chen. I was clearly talking to her nicely. Does her conscience not hurt to respond like that? Guoran was still irritated. First of all, although she looks similar to us, that doesn't mean that she's from the same race. She might not understand what you're saying. Second of all, Long Chen suddenly paused. Second of all what? Boss, tell me. Meng Qi looked from Long Chen and Guoran. She covered her smile. Long Chen doesn't feel good saying it, so I'll do it. Second of all, your smile is too, how should I put it, wretched. She definitely thought you had some bad intentions toward her. As for why she only knocked you back instead of killing you, One reason is due to her own kindness, while another is because of her wariness of our numbers. What? I don't feel like I'm that bad. Guyang, tell me the truth. Is my smile really that of a bad person? Demanded Guoran. Gu Yang seriously looked at Guoran closely, making him smile with teeth. He shook his head. No, not at all. This smile makes you look far worse than an ordinary bad person. Everyone laughed. Long Chen waved his hand, knowing that Guoran had done this on purpose to lighten the mood. Although everyone looked calm on the surface, they couldn't help being nervous. This was the Netherworld. Only half the people who entered could leave alive. That was an iron law of the Netherworld. Let's get to the important matters. I've come here before, so I can tell you that while the Netherworld is terrifying, it's not as exaggerated as rumors say. As long as everyone listens to my directions, we'll be fine. Long Chun led the Dragonblood warriors through the path, and they quickly reached a bridge. The bridge had figures in strange robes patrolling. They held chains, and one of them suddenly stabbed their chain through the air, causing a piercing wail. A figure was pierced by the chain and vanished into the mist. The Dragonblood warriors jumped in shock. That figure had been hiding in midair, and none of them had sensed it. That was a spiritual entity, and these monsters guard this place, not letting spiritual bodies enter our world. As long as we don't attack them, they won't attack us, said Long Chin. Last time when he had entered with the old man, he had seen how terrifying these monsters were. He also had a strange feeling that they were much stronger than the last time he had been here. Everyone carefully walked forward. Just that moment, a snarl came from behind them. Long Chen looked back and saw a strange python rushing over. It had spider-like legs on the upper half of its black body. Two giant teeth flickered with a cold light as it snarled at them. It seemed that the python felt that the Dragonblood Legion was too slow. Its body was very large, and to the sides were the patrolling monsters of the bridge. It didn't dare to touch those monsters, so it chose to glare at the Dragonblood Legion. The bridge wasn't wide enough for it to pass even with the Dragonblood warriors sticking to one side. It was urging the Dragonblood warriors to quicken their pace. However, the Dragonblood warriors ignored it. After all, there were too many monsters present. If they ended up crashing into one by accident, that would be troublesome. After two more snarls, the python seemed to be enraged that they were ignoring it. It opened its mouth, and a black sphere shot out at the Dragonblood warriors at the rear. Courting death. The Dragonblood warriors were enraged. That python clearly knew how dangerous the bridge monsters were and yet still did such a thing. That black sphere was a powerful divine ability filled with the aura of destruction. The Dragonblood warriors were forced to dodge. As a result, the black sphere exploded on contact with the ground, sending surging black chi waves that sent the Dragonblood warriors flying. Others let out infuriated roars. This place was the Netherworld, and there was a law preventing them from flying. If they ended up crashing into the bridge monsters, that would be troublesome. The python seemed excited by the Dragonblood Legion's chaos. It opened its mouth, about to unleash a second attack. Its mouth had barely opened when Gu Yang kicked its jaw, sending it flipping back. With a furious roar, it dragged its long tail against the ground to stabilize. As a result, its tail struck one of the bridge monsters. That monstrosity's chains immediately shot out, piercing the tail. It then pulled, dragging in the huge python's body. The python screamed. They really aren't the same guards as the last time, thought Long Chen. When he had entered the Netherworld with the old man, these figures hadn't been so powerful. At that time, he thought that he could handle them. At that time, his cultivation base and power had been much weaker. In theory, at his current level, he should be able to sweep away these monsters. But now he found that they were much more frightening. The python struggled with all its might. Its claws dragged against the bricks, but it was useless. Although they were all spiritual bodies, it was unknown what laws the Netherworld had to make them feel like they were in their real forms. Sparks flew as its claws dragged against the ground, and sharp sounds rang out. The monstrosity was expressionless as it pulled its chains back. The cold chains didn't give off any fluctuations, but they were able to drag back such a powerful expert. The python's tail suddenly broke off, unleashing a rain of blood. With its remaining body, it leaped into the air and charged across the bridge. The blood splattered across the bricks and then slowly faded. As for the bridge monster, it acted as if nothing had happened and continued to patrol. The broken bricks and clawed bridge automatically recovered. The python was truly powerful, but even it was unable to retaliate against the bridge monster. In the end, it had severed its own tail to run. The Dragonblood warriors' hearts turned cold. After that disturbance, a few dozen other life forms had paused. More and more life forms were entering the Netherworld. Longchen noticed there were more bridges in the distance, just like the one they were on. The heavy mist blocked most of his sight though. This was completely different from when he had entered with the old man. Last time, there had only been one bridge. He had always assumed that there was only one. Was this because the Great Era had come? The Netherworld had set itself up for greater capacity? Or was this a different path than the one he had come with the old man? After that disturbance, the Dragonblood Legion and the other life forms that had arrived slowly crept over the bridge, afraid of touching the patrolling monsters. After passing the bridge, there was only a single path. Upon reaching the end of the path, they saw an endless sea that was the color of the darkest ink. Boss, this ore? It's so familiar. Is it? That black water made Guoran react. When devils had poured out of the devil abyss, Long Chen had given him death water to use against them, and it had the same aura as this black water. The difference though was that the aura of death coming from this black water was even stronger. Everyone felt a chill. This is death spirit water. If you fall in, you'll definitely die. As a demonstration, Long Chen stuck a divine sword into the water. When he took it out, the portion that entered the water had silently vanished. That scene was shocking. The black water had some floating logs on it that could be used to travel. That was the same as last time. These floating logs were the only way to cross this path leading to the gates of hell. Long Chen had everyone stand to the side, allowing the other life forms to cross first. The other life forms stared at Long Chen and the others for a moment before jumping on. Those floating logs looked very unsteady as they bobbled in the water, but they never sank no matter how heavy the entity jumping on was. How curious! Why do they seem so familiar with this place? Wondered Guoran. Perhaps they already know a bit about the Netherworld before entering. Unfortunately, for the human race, upon managing to advance from the Netherworld, all the memories of it will be lost. There's no way to transmit useful information, said Long Chen. After the old man had come out, Long Chen asked him what he had experienced upon entering the gates of hell. However, the old man didn't remember anything at all. As for Long Chen, upon returning to the Martial Heaven continent, he felt like there was some invisible law keeping an eye on him, not allowing him to mention taboo things about the Netherworld. It felt like if he said something, it wouldn't just be him that would suffer. The person who heard would also suffer unbearable karma. That was why in the outside world, Long Chen hadn't exposed too much about what had happened in the Netherworld. But upon returning, that feeling of taboo had clearly vanished. Boss, let's go too. When those life forms had all vanished into the darkness, Guoran spoke up. Don't be impatient. Come, let's distribute the weapons and armor. Long Chen took out bundles with names written on them. Long Chen had taken everyone's equipment before entering the Netherworld. The Netherworld did not allow them to bring in items from the outside world, but Long Chen was an exception. He had the primal chaos space and was not limited by this. Once all the Dragonblood warriors were equipped, they all felt refreshed. Yu Zifeng in particular was like a completely different person with his sword. Alright, let's go now. There's no need to fear. If anyone causes trouble again, we'll directly hack them. Guoran's confidence inflated upon getting his armor again. With this equipment, they had a huge advantage over other life forms that entered the Netherworld. Those life forms couldn't bring in objects because their astral spaces were not like the primal chaos space. The human race had quite a disadvantage when entering this world due to not having special physical bodies, unlike other life forms that use their teeth or claws as weapons. We have too many people, so this path is too dangerous. We'll take a boat across. Long Chen took out a giant boat. It was an ordinary flying boat, but Long Chen had covered the outside with the black soil. The black soil could prevent the corrosion of the death spirit water. Seeing that boat, everyone was delighted. They jumped on. However, here, the boat could not fly. The oars were also wrapped in black soil. Over 200 Dragonblood warriors rowed at the same time, bringing them gliding across the water. From the boat, they could see all kinds of life forms carefully crossing. Those life forms stared at them in disbelief. Some of them accidentally tripped, resulting in their feet falling into the water. Screams rang out, and when they pulled them out, their feet had vanished. As the Dragonblood Legion sped across with the boat, Long Chen saw multiple paths of wooden logs with various life forms carefully creeping forward. Who would have thought that there were so many different life forms other than the ones on the Martial Heaven continent? We really are frogs at the bottom of a well, sighed Meng Qi. They had to have encountered tens of thousands of different life forms, but not one human, let alone someone from the Martial Heaven continent. Eventually, the flying boat reached a 9-colored whirlpool, and they jumped onto the wooden logs. The Dragonblood warriors were all stunned by the sight of the 9-colored whirlpool. Long Chen smiled. He had had the same expression as them when he had first seen this whirlpool. Long Chen put away the flying boat. After that, the Dragonblood Legion descended down the whirlpool through a staircase. Upon reaching the bottom where there was flat land, they saw a path of illusions that went through the waterfall of the whirlpool. Long Chen looked at the surrounding waterfall. This was the core of the 9 springs. He and Xie Qianqian had been sucked into purgatory from here. Long Chen led the Dragonblood Legion through the passageway, and they quickly arrived at a set of giant gates. The gates of hell. The gates were so huge that people's hearts shuddered. If they were on the continent, they would probably be engulfed amongst the stars. Black and ancient diagrams covered the gates. Those diagrams weren't of sinister ghoulish faces, but they still exuded a dense air of death. In front of the gates of hell was a sea of various life forms. Those life forms were all silent. That was because upon getting closer to the gates of hell, the dense air of death made them feel like an invisible hand was clutching their throats. Last time I came, I didn't feel such pressure. My realm must have been lacking. This was Long Chen's second time coming to the gates of hell. Last time, although he had been shocked, he hadn't felt such pressure. This feeling was like his life was in someone else's hands. Meng Qi and the others were a bit pale. It felt like there was a law present in control of life and death. They couldn't fight that law. If it wanted them dead, there would be nothing they could do. That wasn't a good feeling. Long Chen looked at the other life forms and found that some of them were in an even worse state. Some of them were shuddering. The Dragonblood Legion slowly got closer. Suddenly, a furious roar came from behind them. Long Chen turned to see the giant python. The giant python's tail was still gone. Perhaps due to the Netherworld's laws, it was unable to heal. It was infuriated at the sight of them, and black energy gathered within its mouth. Yu Zifeng snorted and reached for the sword on his back. However, before he attacked, a hand suddenly reached out of the black gates and smashed the python into bits. It had happened so quickly that it felt like it was over before it even began. A terrifying life form was killed without even understanding what was going on. The life forms that were killed here would never return to their bodies. What remained in the outside world of theirs would just be corpses. That hand returned to the gates an instant after killing the python as if nothing had happened. Long Chen and the others suddenly realized why these life forms didn't dare to say anything. The gates of hell had their own automatic attack laws. The great gates were not fully opened, but there was a slight crack. Of course, it was slight in comparison to the giant gates. There were many miles of space. However, too many life forms had gathered here, so they could only slowly enter through that crack. "Why does it feel like lining up to reincarnate?" mumbled Guoran. All these life forms had terror in their eyes but had no choice but to follow. "Hey, don't talk nonsense. You're going to jinx us," rebuked Li Qi. Long Chen said, "Actually, this is nothing. The path of cultivation is one of no return. It's the same as the Yellow Springs path that we just walked. You want to go back? Just look at the people behind you. They've blocked your path." When you look back, the first one to kill you will be the person behind you. Just like in cultivation, we can only continue to advance. We cannot stop. If we stop, our enemies will advance until you face a terrible fate. Death isn't frightening. What's frightening is dying without being able to decide what time, place, and way you die. Don't we cultivate to control our own life and death? To transcend everything else and be free? However big your aspirations are is however much resistance you'll face. That is something that will never change. Long Chen, in the Xiantian Monastery, I asked you about your aspirations. Do you remember what you said? Tang Wanner smiled. Of course I remember. I wanted to be a new and improved scoundrel with dreams, accomplishments, integrity, and meaning. Long Chen sighed deeply. It's too bad, but after all these years, my dreams, accomplishments, and meaning are still present, but my integrity has been shattered. Meng Qi and the others covered their mouths as they laughed. The tense atmosphere lightened quite a bit. Quite a few of the other life forms stared at them with shock and some even with disdain. They didn't understand what these humans were saying, but for them to be laughing in this place where others didn't dare to speak, some of them admired their guts, while another portion sneered at them for being fools. Curious, Chu Yao suddenly said, "What is it?" "It seems like there's a nail missing from the gates, right? It's very conspicuous." Chu Yao pointed. Everyone looked in the direction where she was pointing. The nails on both gates were symmetrical, except for one spot where one nail was missing. It couldn't be. Long Chen's eyes almost popped out. Wasn't that the same location he had taken a nail from? How was that possible? After entering the Netherworld again, he had found that it was completely different from last time. He thought that he had entered a completely different place. However, seeing the missing nail, he jumped. Before this, he had been comforting others. Now, he was the one who had an urge to flee. Last time, when he had taken that nail, a giant hand had chased him out all the way to the exit, almost killing him. "What is it, boss? Do you know what's going on?" No, I have no idea. I was just wondering who would be so brazen as to take a nail from the gates of hell." "Someone took a nail? Impossible. If it was boss who dared to pluck it, I'd believe it, but someone else? I'm confident no one else has such big guts," declared Guoran. "It's our turn. Be careful and don't get distracted," whispered Long Chen. Just as they were talking, they had reached the crack between the gates. At that moment, they saw white light from the other side, which obstructed their vision. Everyone could only step through with trepidation into that white light. Upon entering the white light, their bodies vanished. Long Chen took a deep breath. Since there was no way back, he could only advance bravely. When Long Chen was enveloped by the white light, he was blinded for a moment. However, when his vision recovered, he saw that he was within a grand palace. The palace was gigantic. He was like an ant inside of it. There were stairs ahead of him extending onwards, and at the end was a beautiful throne. Atop the throne was an icy woman in a black dress looking down upon him. Her hair billowed back like a waterfall. Her blue eyes were like sharp blades, icy and emotionless. She was like a god sitting there. Long Chen almost cried out upon seeing her face. All his hair stood on end. "You!" Long Chen had never been so nervous that he was tongue-tied. He felt despair. "How you?" Long Chen felt like his throat was dry. As dry as if boiling iron was being poured down in it. This person was Leng Yueyan. Actually, if she was Leng Yueyan, he wouldn't be so afraid. The main thing was that it wasn't. She was simply someone who looked identical to Leng Yueyan, but Leng Yueyan had said that this woman was a god, a Nethergod. A Nethergod? As in the god of the Netherworld? Long Chen suddenly realized that he had sent himself to his doom. Who knew if he would even be granted the mercy of death now? The Nethergod looked at Long Chen without the slightest emotion. There was no joy or anger. She was motionless, wordless, like she was a statue. Long Chen felt goosebumps exploding all over his body. It was over. Long Chen sensed that she was this world. With just a thought, she could wipe him out of existence. Back in the Martial Heaven continent, he hadn't been able to sense her power. But here, he didn't even have the bravery to resist. She was a god. Resistance was futile. "Ah, I see that you're very busy, so I won't take up more of your time. Let's talk another day." Long Chen stared at her for hours before he admitted defeat. He was drenched in sweat, unable to endure it any longer. Forcing a smile, he slowly retreated. That silent stare was too painful. He felt enough pressure to drive someone insane. Every breath had felt as long as a year. This kind of stare was torture. Long Chen slowly retreated, but the Nethergod still didn't move. Even her eyes didn't blink. She was like a statue sitting there. Has her divine soul left? Long Chen suddenly had a thought. Lun Yuan had said that the Nethergod had made countless clones. Her true body's mind had to control those clones. During that time, her soul would be with those clones to control them. This guess made Long Chen's withered guts grow again. Could he capture her true body at this time? However, after thinking about it, he shook his head. What kind of joke was that? This wasn't the martial heaven continent. It was the Netherworld. What was he going to use to capture a god? Long Chen slowly retreated out of the palace gates. The gates were hundreds of meters tall, and he didn't know what metal they were made of. They seemed ancient and heavy. Long Chen pushed the gates, only to find that they didn't budge. It was like they had grown out of the earth. Long Chen pushed harder with both hands but was still unable to move them. Starting to panic, Long Chen summoned the Azure Dragon battle armor. He was able to use all his techniques, but even so, he was unable to shake the gates. As he increased his force, eventually, it was his shoulder that dislocated. Cold sweat dripped down him. "Fuck, what an evil gate," cursed Long Chen quietly. "Yes, these are the gates of evil." At this moment, an icy voice without any emotion rang out, making Long Chen's hair stand on end. "Ah, what a good name." "Ha," Long Chen stiffened. He forced out some laughter. Although he couldn't see his own face, he knew that his current smile was definitely very ugly. These gates are called the Holders of Evil. Even if you tore down this entire palace, you wouldn't be able to open them. The Holders of Evil contain the devils and fiends of countless worlds. Every 48,000 years, they will open once, unleashing the souls of those devils upon the 100 domains and 1,000 prefectures where they will start a slaughter. The Nethergod looked at the giant gates expressionlessly. For the Nethergod to say so much to him surprised Long Chen. It seemed that he had a chance. The Nethergod hadn't directly killed him on sight. Perhaps there was room for talk. However, with her expressionless face lacking any joy or anger, he didn't know what to say. Long Chen was normally able to judge a person's mood and general character with a glance, or at least know what to say to them. However, he felt powerless and minuscule in front of the Nethergod. "Can I ask what the 100 domains and 1,000 prefectures are?" Long Chen really didn't know what to say. He simply continued with the topic she had left off, while his head rapidly worked to figure out what he should do. Long Chen stealthily appraised the Nethergod. He hadn't dared to examine her before, but now that they were closer, he saw that her black dress was composed of countless runes. Those runes were as tiny as specks of dust. Each of them was moving according to a strange rhythm, as if they represented different laws bowing toward her. The dress was as black as the blackest night, but her chest was as white as snow. The stark contrast was especially intense. The worst thing though was that when he thought about that, his memories of tearing off that dress popped into his mind. Long Chen involuntarily gulped. Within the silent palace, it was like thunder. The Nethergod slowly turned away from the Holders of Evil to look at Long Chen. She didn't seem angry upon knowing his thoughts. Her sapphire eyes looked at Long Chen calmly. "Tell me, how do you want to die?" "Can I tell the truth?" "Yes. I don't want to die." The Nethergod shook her head. "That's impossible. You blasphemed my body and cast dust over my heart. Without killing you, I cannot undo that knot. So you must die." Long Chen bitterly smiled. "Is there really no room for negotiation?" "No. Death is your only fate," said the Nethergod coldly with supreme divine might. Hearing that sentence, Long Chen somehow felt a kind of joy in accepting his fate. It was as if he could set down all his burdens, as if death was a release. Long Chen actually formed such a desire to kill himself. However, as soon as he thought about it, he awakened from that desire. He was once more covered in cold sweat and stared in horror at the Nethergod. The Nethergod was a bit surprised. You really aren't a normal human. You can actually resist my imperial decrees. Long Chen stared at her in terror. The Nethergod hadn't even made a move but had almost made him kill himself. He felt like his will was weak in front of the Nethergod. Evil Moon appeared in his hand, and he pointed it at the Nethergod. Since you want to kill me, I can fight to the death against you. Although this person looked identical to Leng Yuan, she wasn't Leng Yuan. She was a god, the ruler of the Netherworld. Even knowing that this was the territory of the Nethergod and that he had no chance, he still took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He forcibly condensed his battle intent. Unfortunately, he was like a person trying to fight against the cosmos's river of stars. That was just how great the difference between them was. Holding Evil Moon, he had a feeling that it was as laughable as using a banana to threaten a dragon. The gulf in power made him feel profoundly powerless. You were actually able to bring objects from the outside world into the Netherworld? Long Chen, you really are surprising. The Nethergod smiled. That smile was beautiful enough to topple a world, but Long Chen only saw death within it. The Nethergod's will to kill him could not be changed. Long Chen didn't hesitate any longer. He stabbed Evil Moon forward. Evil Moon was just a few inches away from the Nethergod's head. However, it felt like there were countless layers of defense in that small space. His power was quickly exhausted, and at 3 inches, it felt like he had struck a giant iceberg and could no longer advance at all. Long Chen, these are the laws of the Netherworld, warned Evil Moon. Here, everything must submit to her. You cannot kill her. If you're smart, you'll think of some other way. Even Evil Moon was anxious and helpless against such a terrifying existence. Long Chen muttered inside. Maybe smarts might work against the people he normally faced, but in front of a god? Was that a joke? Divine Ring, Battle Armor. Long Chen's divine ring burst into existence. The laws of the world were shattered and the palace trembled. What kind of cultivation technique is this? The Nethergod's expression finally changed. The laws of the Netherworld were being broken by Long Chen's divine ring. Evil Moon stabbed toward her head. However, just as it was about to pierce her head, the Nethergod raised 2 fingers and lightly clamped down on Evil Moon. Long Chen was instantly unable to push Evil Moon forward. Boom. The earth trembled as Long Chen pushed. Evil Moon pushed through the Nethergod's fingers, once more causing her expression to change. She was the ruler of this world. Her power could no longer just be called power. She was the will of the Netherworld, ruling the laws of the Netherworld. With her fingers, she embodied a lock using the laws of the Netherworld. It could be classified as a divine ability, but Long Chen had actually broken through. In all her years in control of the Netherworld, she had never encountered such a situation. Split the heavens 8. Evil Moon swung down with a thunderous howl. An explosion of waves erupted. The Nethergod raised her hand, using her palm as a shield against Long Chen's saber. Long Chen felt a powerful backlash and coughed up blood. With just a random blow, Long Chen was sent flying. However, the Nethergod's shock continued to grow. When it came down to it, Long Chen was just a mortal. All mortals had an innate reverence for gods, but Long Chen was still fighting fearlessly against her. Furthermore, his attack was not being suppressed by the laws of the Netherworld. Instead, it was the laws of the Netherworld that were broken. She was growing more and more curious about Long Chen's origins. However, at the same time as her shock grew, she also became bewildered. You know you're not a match for me and you're still not starting off with your full power? You just lost your only chance to injure me. Just now, Long Chen's surprising power had caught her off guard. There truly had been a chance for him to stab her. But the curious thing was that he still hadn't used his full power. You're a woman I've been with. Although it was the result of many factors and accidents, it's reality. I committed a mistake against you, so you want to kill me for it, which is understandable. I had a chance to kill you just now, but I let you off. Now, whether I die to your hands or you die to my hands, our grudges can be settled. You think you can kill me? The Nethergod's lips curled into a beautiful smile. It looked disdainful, but it was still very moving. Let alone a mortal like you, even a god would be beneath me in my Nethergod palace. If you think saying something like that will make me feel sympathy for you and let you off, you're wrong. You should give up on such thoughts. The Nethergod suddenly vanished. A hand silently reached for the back of Long Chen's neck. Without looking back and without hesitation, Long Chen slashed Evil Moon behind him at exactly the same time as the Nethergod vanished. Evil Moon swept through the air. After that, a hand appeared where there was originally nothing, and the saber cut through her wrist. A line of blood flowed out of her pale skin. The blood was multicolored and bright. As a result, the palace shook and rumbled. This was the blood of a god. Long Chen had actually injured the Nethergod. At this moment, the Nethergod looked at her wound with disbelief. Flickering lightning appeared on top of Evil Moon. Now do you believe it? I really do have the ability to kill you. Long Chen suddenly swung his saber again, a pair of lightning wings appearing on his back and a giant lightning blade shooting out of Evil Moon. It was like a lightning war god had appeared in the Netherworld. Lightning danced along Evil Moon, crackling with power. The palace quivered from its power. The Nethergod's dress was torn, but her wound quickly healed. Following that, her dress also healed. The only thing different was that the Nethergod was now deeply shaken. You were able to bring the outside world's thunder force into this place through a Yuan spirit body? The Nethergod could not believe this. This place was the Netherworld, the place in charge of reincarnation. To bring the outside world's objects in here was already surprising, but it wasn't unthinkable. Some life forms did have powerful Yuan spirits that could merge with divine items. When they were inseparable like that, it was possible to bring those divine items with them here. However, throughout all her time in control of the Netherworld, she had only seen such a thing a few times. However, to bring a whole elemental power from the outside was unimaginable. This didn't just break the laws of the Netherworld, but it also broke the laws of an even higher level. After a brief moment of shock, the Nethergod shook her head at Long Chen. You really are surprising. You were able to bring your world's most violent energy here. Even in the 100,000 years I've controlled the Netherworld, this is a first. Fine, I admit your thunder force was shocking. However, even in the best case, it can only give me a heavy injury. To destroy the god of a world with just this is impossible. Long Chen, giving up your remote chance of injuring me makes me feel great pity for you. You will regret your foolishness. Long Chen suddenly laughed. I, Long Chen, have never done something that I regret. A man must be able to accept responsibility. Even if I die to you, I won't regret it. If the Nethergod was just a Nethergod, then Long Chen wouldn't give up the slightest, most remote chance to kill them. However, this was a person who looked identical to Leng Yueyan and whom he had been intimately close to. Although it wasn't a sentimental affair, he wouldn't ever be able to forget what had happened that day. Even if he could comfort himself by saying that it was a result of mistaken identity, he still felt guilt and shame. Facing this Nethergod, despite knowing she wanted him dead and that he had no chance of victory, he still gave up his only chance to heavily injure her. That was essentially giving up his chance to survive, but he didn't regret it. Instead, he felt even more at peace. At the very least, he could die with a clear heart, and now he could fight without that shame weighing down on him. His fear of the Nethergod also began to fade, and his confidence rose. That's fine. Due to this, I won't cast you into purgatory for an eternity. I'll give you a quick death. The Nethergod nodded slightly. Raising a hand, divine might crashed down. Long Chen's black robes billowed in an invisible wind. Black serpents shot out like sharp swords, containing within them endless death energy. Lei Long burst into existence, roaring. It unleashed its full power, transforming into lightning runes that merged into the lightning wings on Long Chen's back. Sundering lightning heavenly wings. The two wings slashed down like blades. Boom. The black serpents exploded. Long Chen was no longer holding back. Lei Long had essentially given over all its power, merging with Long Chen. If Long Chen died, it would die as well. In the Netherworld, Long Chen couldn't activate the full power of the Paragon art. He couldn't connect to the lightning field's energy. All he could do was use Lei Long's power. Once all its power was used up, Lei Long would vanish from this world. What Long Chen was using was Lei Long's life. The Nethergod was once more startled. This lightning was even stronger than she had expected. As the ruler of the Netherworld, nothing that took place here could escape her. But before this, she hadn't sensed this immense power of Long Chen's. At the same time, she had to admit that if Long Chen had suddenly unleashed this power at the start, perhaps he would have had the slightest chance of killing her. When she thought of that, a ripple finally appeared in her eyes. However, she didn't overthink it. Evil Moon was rumbling toward her with berserk lightning. God power, Nether Slash. The Nethergod snorted and waved a hand. A black mark appeared in her palm. The palace rumbled as all the Netherworld's power converged on her palm. Boom! Lightning exploded. The thunder force Long Chen had condensed on top of Evil Moon was shattered. Long Chen felt an irresistible power send him flying. He was shocked to find that this one attack had used up half of Lei Long's life. One more and it would be destroyed. The power of a god was truly terrifying. As he flew back, Long Chen raised a hand. A flame lotus appeared, and chanting filled the palace. The palace shuddered wildly as if power was trying to pour into it from every direction. The Nethergod's expression changed. This world extermination flame lotus was condensed by Hua Long's core energy. The Nirvana scripture activated almost instinctively. When he began chanting, he noticed that there was no effect in the Netherworld. But that didn't make him stop. The chanting grew more and more sonorous within the palace, and Long Chen could clearly sense some kind of energy pouring over. However, the Nethergod palace blocked that energy from reaching him. The energy crashed against the palace walls, trying to break in. The palace continued to rumble. It was like a volcano was trying to explode into the palace. Even Long Chen was startled by this. He didn't know what was going on. The flame lotus remained the same size as it was not supported by the rest of the world's energy. Boom. It felt like something had exploded outside the palace. The light of endless flames could be seen. From a window, Long Chen managed to see a sea of flames outside the palace. The flames were red but not an ordinary red. It was the red of blood. Even their form seemed similar to blood. For some reason, Long Chen felt a chill upon seeing those flames. He didn't know what those flames were, but he knew that if he was touched by one dot of it, he would be instantly incinerated. As for the Nethergod, she was horrified. Ignoring Long Chen, she rushed over to her throne. However, just as she approached her throne, an identical figure appeared, pointing a white bone sword at her. There was a bewitching smile on her beautiful face. Did you end up miscalculating? Leng Yuan. Long Chen was delighted to see her. Leng Yuan winked at Long Chen. You're worthy of being my man. When we get back, I'll reward you. The Nethergod's expression sank. Killing intent raged in her eyes. You're angry? Ha! It seems that this is a first since you were defiled by my man. What, are you getting angry at yourself? At your miscalculation? You wanted to use my man's death to threaten me and force me to appear. Now that I'm here, aren't you happy? Laughed Leng Yuan. Long Chen, I didn't expect you to be able to draw over the Netherworld's karmic hell flames. It looks like more and more of them are gathering. When the entire Netherworld's karmic flames gather here, even the Nethergod palace will be incinerated. Once this throne is destroyed, she will lose her power as Nethergod and be killed. Activate the throne. If I die, you'll die too, shouted the Nethergod. Who cares? I've always been fighting for the initiative, but in the end, I'm just a clone. Even after merging with more of your clones, you remain the true body. No matter how strong I become, I will always be suppressed by you. To tell the truth, I'm pretty tired of it all. We can just die together, said Leng Yuan nonchalantly. The Nethergod furiously took out another bone blade, slashing it at Leng Yuan. Their bone blades clashed. Long Chen felt a burst of power send him flying. Long Chen hacked up blood. As for the world extermination flame lotus, he didn't even have a chance to unleash it. It dissipated, and he smashed into the holders of evil. Long Chen was pressed flat against the gates. Smiling as she blocked the Nethergod's sword, Leng Yuan said, "Although I'm not a match for you, I can stall you for an incense stick's worth of time. By the end of that, you will be dead." Long Chen quickly extinguished the flames. The Nethergod's expressions went through several transformations before she shouted at Long Chen. The great Nethergod, ruler of the Netherworld, a supreme existence, is actually begging for help from a mortal. Haha, it really is delightful to think about. Leng Yuan laughed as her sword danced, blocking the Nethergod's attacks. Their two bone swords danced through the air, unleashing waves of power that tore through the void. Long Chen was pressed flat against the holders of evil by the bursts of power coming from them. Whistling sword chi slashed through his body. He felt like he was on the verge of collapse. "Leng Yuan, you and I are one person. If I die, you'll definitely die. Condensing a new divine core will require going through reincarnation and starting over. Are you really willing to destroy 100,000 years of cultivation?" shouted the Nethergod. Leng Yuan smiled. "I'm fine with it. You separated me from you so you could kill me. Don't act like we're one. You are you and I am me. I have always been viewed by you as a weakness to be wiped out. Now we can all die together and go through reincarnation. Isn't that great? We don't need to keep fighting for our lives." Leng Yuan seemed completely indifferent. But this shocked Long Chen. It seemed that the Nirvana scripture had brought over something amazing that could destroy even the Nethergod. Long Chen wanted to try mediating things, but their immense power was crushing him. He had to do his best just to not die. "Long Chen, are you willing to watch her die in front of you?" shouted the Nethergod. "Ming Tsongyue, I didn't expect you to have fallen to such a level. You are using me to threaten a mortal? You really are a disgrace of the world of Nethergods," mocked Leng Yuan. The Nethergod ignored Leng Yuan. "If the Nethergod palace is destroyed, the Netherworld will be thrown into chaos. The people that you brought with you will be destroyed." Long Chen was startled, but then he heard Leng Yuan sneered, "What nonsense, you are merely the one in control of the Nethergod's laws, not the creator. If you die, the Netherworld will continue acting according to its laws. Ming Tsongyue, I'm looking down on you more and more. I'm telling you the truth. If the throne is destroyed, the laws here will be temporarily thrown into chaos. There will definitely be a change in the laws. Your Dragonblood Legion will be lucky if even a third of them can leave alive. But if the Netherworld does not get thrown into such chaos, up to half of the Dragonblood Legion can pass according to the laws," declared Ming Tsongyue. "Long Chen, don't you want to say something? How can I fucking speak?" Long Chen concentrated all his power just to curse. As a result, he coughed up another mouthful of blood. He felt the power of his Yuan spirit flying away, with death approaching. He immediately shut his mouth. However, this also resulted in Ming Tsongyue reacting. Long Chen was just a mortal, and this fight between gods was unbearable for him. Seeing his state, she was startled. She was no longer able to view him as an ordinary mortal, but seeing him plastered to the gates due to the shockwaves from their power made her realize the difference. Ming Tsongyue retreated, no longer fighting with Leng Yuan. Long Chen finally slid down the gates, feeling like his skeleton had been crushed into paste. This body was made of only his Yuan spirit and was not a physical body. But the Netherworld's laws were mysterious, and everything that passed here felt the same as on the Martial Heaven continent. Long Chen endured the pain. He tried to speak, but suddenly the palace swayed. Ming Tsongyue's expression changed. The protective light of the Nethergod palace has been incinerated by the karmic hell flames. If you don't dispel them, the palace will also be quickly destroyed. Ming Tsongyue's tone was flat, but there was some panic in her eyes. All her hopes were on Long Chen now. If he was willing to die along with her, then this place would be turned to ash. The palace's temperature suddenly began to rise. The gates, the walls, the ground, the pillars, they began to glow red. Long Chen felt the heat coming from outside, incinerating some kind of law inside the palace. Perhaps when that law was gone, the palace would also be gone. Promise me that the people I brought can all leave alive, and I'll immediately think of a way to extinguish the flames, said Long Chen. Impossible, said Lin Yuan. She is the executioner of the rules, not the one who made them. She does not have that ability. Lin Yuan's expression was calm. She didn't seem to fear death. She walked over to Long Chen and smiled. Don't be afraid. When she dies, your Yuan spirit will follow the laws of the Netherworld and continue onward. You will still be able to complete your breakthrough. What about you? Asked Long Chen. He didn't feel any ease from Lin Yuan's words. Instead, he only grew more worried. It sounded like she was saying goodbye. Lin Yuan gently caressed Long Chen's cheek. Looking into his eyes, there was sadness in her ocean blue eyes. My foolish man, you have so many women beside you. Are you going to be hung up on me? I've always been hung up on you. I can't forget you, even in my dreams, said Long Chen. It was the truth. He had been constantly worried about her since the last time, worried about her being consumed by the Nethergod. He saw his own emotions being reflected within Lin Yuan's eyes. Her normally icy expression wavered, her eyes reddening. In the eyes of the outside world, he was an Iron Man. But even a hero couldn't endure that pain. You really are a bastard. If you act like this, we'll have lost. Lost completely. Lin Yuan suddenly held Long Chen tightly and cried. Lin Yuan was gratified to be cared about this much. But at the same time, if Long Chen was unwilling to let her die, the Nethergod would have an advantage over them. Long Chen would definitely expel the flames so that she wouldn't die. If that happened, her fate would be to be consumed by the Nethergod. Her memories would be erased. If that was the only option, then she would rather die. Long Chen, if you wait any longer, we'll all die. Seeing Long Chen and Lin Yuan hugging, the Nethergod felt a strange emotion. The inside of the Nethergod palace was ablaze. It was starting to show signs of melting. Fine. I'll think of a way. Long Chen formed hand seals, preparing to use the Nirvana scripture. Hold it. Lin Yuan suddenly stopped him. Ming Tsangyue, for our own safety, hand over the Nethergod order to us temporarily. Otherwise, who knows if you'll kill us as soon as the flames retreat. The Nethergod's expression changed. Absolutely not. The Nethergod order is the key that controls the entire Netherworld. Giving it to you would be entrusting my life to you. Lin Yuan smiled coldly. You and I are one. Wasn't that what you said to Long Chen? If you want to con me, don't you think you're insulting your own intelligence? Even if I had the Nethergod order, so what? You are the true body. You have absolute authority. Can I defeat you? You'll still have the Nethergod's throne. That's where all the laws and energy of the Netherworld converge. Even if I have the Nethergod order, I can't threaten you. It's just a guarantee for us. If you don't like it, then fine. Long Chen, don't waste your energy. Once you force back the flames, she'll instantly kill us. It'd be better for us to all die together. Long Chen had no way of forming seals with Lin Yuan holding his hands. He knew she was fighting for more cards to use against the Nethergod. He could only stare at the Nethergod. The Nethergod's expression changed several times. But the rumbling and deforming of the palace made her throw out a black tile. It looked very ordinary. On its black background were 9 differently colored diagrams. Long Chen's heart shook. Those diagrams were an image of the 9 springs. At the core was the waterfall, and within the waterfall was a set of gates. Before he could get a closer look, Lin Yuan took it. With the Nethergod order in her hand, she smiled. That smile made the Nethergod feel like she had been tricked. Let's go. Lin Yuan's figure swayed. The 3 of them vanished from within the palace, appearing on top of a giant bone tower. From the giant tower, Long Chen was stunned by what he saw. Everything in the surroundings was enveloped in flames. There were countless crazy and anguished figures within the flames that were attacking the bone tower. The outside of the bone tower had a layer of black chi protecting it, but as those figures crazily attacked, the black chi grew sparser. Long Chen formed hand seals, and chanting filled the air. Long Chen activated the Nirvana scripture with all his power. The surging flames and bestial roars coming from the flames calmed down. The Nethergod sighed in relief. However, that moment of calm lasted for just a few seconds before they became violent again. The flames erupted with even greater intensity. The Nirvana scripture had failed. It didn't matter how long Chen tried, he was unable to stop the flames. Seeing the black chi be almost burned away, he let out an unwilling roar. How can this be happening? Long Chen was shocked, angered, and panicked. The Nirvana scripture was able to control flames. Just now, the karmic hell flames had clearly started weakening, but he was unable to suppress them. The Nirvana scripture was not the problem. It was that he himself was too weak. These endless flames were on a completely different level from him. Long Chen, I was the one who brought the karmic hell flames here. I used you. Leng Yuan stood beside him, guilty. The Nethergod's expression changed, and her bone sword whipped down. However, Leng Yuan seemed to have expected it and pulled Long Chen away. The Nethergod raged, Leng Yuan, why would you do this? How does this benefit you in the slightest? Now she realized that this was the result that Leng Yuan had always wanted. Even Long Chen had been used. The Nethergod had now been pushed into desperate straits with no way to reverse things. Long Chen was staring at Leng Yuan with shock. However, he didn't feel anger toward her. He was merely befuddled. I'm sorry, Long Chen. I'll explain. Leng Yuan turned to the Nethergod, raising her bone sword against her. I've been fighting you for a long time now. I've already gathered the energy of all your clones. However, clones remain clones, and we only occupy 40% of your divine energy. As the true body, you have absolute dominion over the remaining 60%. Perhaps you anticipated such a thing when you created your clones, so you kept the main power to yourself. As a result, I can never defeat you. I thought of 1,000 ways to fight, but not one was able to beat you and take control. I've had enough of those days. When you stopped hunting me down, I knew that your attention had turned to Long Chen. When Long Chen subdued you on the Martial Heaven continent, you came to learn many things about him. You also knew when he would be coming here. You stood guard here, waiting to use him to force me out. You set up the inverted cosmos barrier so that once I came, I couldn't leave. To tell the truth, I'd say that your intelligence must have reverted to the level of a child after you cut me off. Have you forgotten that the inverted cosmos barrier also cuts off your senses toward the outside world? You're the one who trapped yourself. I opened the hell flame purgatory of the 18 levels of purgatory. I didn't have the power to draw them here, but I could construct a spatial portal that allowed them to come here. You thought you understood everything about Long Chen, but you didn't know that Long Chen possesses his own special world within his body. His thunder force and flame energy are both stored there. Furthermore, you could not know that the Nirvana scripture that he controls is an extremely ancient secret art capable of calling the power of all flames. So when you had him cornered to draw me out, you didn't realize you also cornered yourself. At least 1/10 of the karmic hell flames from the hell flame purgatory have been drawn here. You should know for how many millions of years the hell flame purgatory have existed. The flames contain the power of karma, the karma of countless life forms that died. Long Chen can control the flames, but he can't control the karma within. As for you, you actually didn't think of that. You thought that Long Chen was able to draw the karmic hell flames here, so he should be able to send them away. Ming Zhangyue, you're really too naive. When the Nethergod heard all this, the fury in her eyes faded away. The flames continued to get closer. They were about to envelop the entire tower, but a faint smile appeared on her face. Karmic flames. The flames of karma. The cycle of karma purifies all things. Even after so many years of overseeing the Netherworld, I still didn't understand the true essence of the karmic hell flames. The karma that I set into motion back then is the karma I am reaping now. The faint smile on the Nethergod's face gave Long Chen the same feeling as Leng Yuan. She was no longer an arrogant god, no longer cold and emotionless. She now seemed free. The Nethergod smiled at Leng Yuan. Back then I was single-mindedly focused on perfection. I kept feeling like I had a hint of goodness wrecking my thoughts, creating contradictions within me. I sent you to a different world so that your experiences could erase that trace of goodness. That way, I could reach a perfect state of heart and break through my current shackles to higher realms. I didn't expect to meet my retribution in the end. All this karma was created by me and must be accepted by me. Leng Yuan looked at her with a complicated expression. It truly must be accepted by you. You cannot blame anyone else. I don't resent you for it though. You are me and I am you. The Nethergod looked at the Nethergod order in Leng Yuan's hand. She shook her head. I find it hard to believe that my clone would love someone, and a mortal at that. Leng Yuan smiled. She looked at Long Chen anxiously, then turned back to the Nethergod. You're once more starting a contradiction. If I didn't love him, how could you use him to draw me out? Ever since you separated me from your soul, your intelligence has been dropping. You were unable to sense it since you are the ruler of this world. But if you had met a real opponent, you would have been killed. I tricked the Nethergod order out of you to help Long Chen and the Dragonblood Legion pass this tribulation. That way, even if I die, I will have repaid the debt I owe him. Leng Yuan turned to Long Chen emotionally. However, she was surprised to see him staring at the sea of flames furiously. There were veins popping on his forehead. She didn't know what he was thinking. Long Chen, don't be afraid. You and your lovers will be fine. You'll be able to pass safely and live good lives in the other world. Leng Yuan thought that Long Chen was still trying to resolve their current crisis. He was unaware that even the god of the Netherworld had already accepted her fate. No, you can't die, neither of you. There must be a way. Ideas popped into Long Chen's eyes and deflated just as quickly. His intuition was telling him that he could resolve this predicament, but he was unable to figure out how. The sea of flames was about to overwhelm them in a few more seconds. Leng Yuan and Ming Songyue would both die then. He was unable to accept such a result. However, at this critical moment, his head had stopped working. He was unable to think through the problem clearly, making him feel like tearing open his head. Leng Yuan knew that Long Chen wasn't so panicked because of his own life, but because of them, making her even more emotional. Long Chen, thank you. Although my life was short, having met you during this short time made it worth it. Take care. Leng Yuan raised her hand. The Nethergod order shone, enveloping Long Chen in light. The Nethergod order was the only thing capable of influencing the laws of the Netherworld. Using it, Ming Songyue had brought Long Chen to the Nethergod Palace instead of where he should have gone for his breakthrough. Now, Leng Yuan was able to send Long Chen through to where he should be. Furthermore, Leng Yuan was planning on fulfilling Long Chen's wish and allowing all the Dragonblood warriors to pass smoothly. By drawing Long Chen here, the Nethergod would have to face a curse from the Netherworld for interfering with its laws. However, that level of curse was within the acceptable range. However, to use it to allow over 10,000 people to cheat their way through this tribulation would result in a terrifying curse. That curse was something not even a Nethergod could endure. Since they were about to die, she didn't care about this curse. Emotions flowed within Leng Yuan's eyes. Long Chen, goodbye forever. In her final moments, Leng Yuan made her choice. The Nethergod order shook. The 9-colored whirlpool flowed, sending Long Chen away. Suddenly, Long Chen jumped out of the light, diving into the sea of karmic hell flames. Leng Yuan and Ming Songyue both shouted at the same time. Even the Nethergod was stunned, not knowing what Long Chen was doing. This was clearly suicide. Leng Yuan had opened a path for him to leave, even letting the Dragonblood Legion pass through the Netherworld. The Nethergod could have stopped her, but she had given up. Perhaps while facing death, she had finally broken the knot in her heart. No longer hating, she chose to accept reality. Although she didn't feel much toward Long Chen, she was affected by Leng Yuan's emotions. Inside, she hoped for Long Chen to survive, so she hadn't interfered with Leng Yuan's actions. However, for Long Chen to jump into the karmic hell flames, even she was unable to react. The Nethergod order could control everything within the Netherworld, but not the 18 levels of purgatory. The laws there were not under her control. That was precisely why Leng Yuan had drawn the karmic hell flames here to face her end together with Ming Songyue. Long Chen. Leng Yueyan let out a mournful cry. She was ready to face death, but she didn't want to see Long Chen die. It was too late though. Long Chen had been devoured by the karmic hell flames. Let alone a mortal, even a god wouldn't be able to last long. Leng Yueyan wiped away her tears. A warm smile appeared on her face. Long Chen, you want to accompany me in death? Then I'll accompany you. She prepared to jump in as well. Just at this moment, a heaven shaking will erupted from within the sea of flames. Long Chen was doing his best to think of something, but no matter how he tried, he was unable to think of anything to save Leng Yueyan. In his fury, his head was buzzing. He had jumped directly into the sea of karmic flames. Since you've chosen me, you won't let me die. I can't rouse you, but I refuse to believe you'll just watch me die. Long Chen roared inside his heart. He could vaguely feel that the Pill Sovereign's will was his only hope, but he was unable to consciously evoke the Pill Sovereign's will. When he fell into the sea of karmic hell flames, he fell unconscious. In that instant, a terrifying power erupted from within his soul. A will that looked down on the rest of the world appeared. When that will appeared, the surging flames seemed to become terrified. They calmed down, like a wild wolf becoming a puppy wagging its tail pitifully. The sea of flames burst away. A pair of invisible hands gently held onto Long Chen. As the flames retreated, flame runes trembled, prostrating themselves to Long Chen. Or more accurately, toward the hands holding Long Chen. The two hands vanished in but a moment, causing Long Chen to begin falling once more. A different pair of hands took their place, holding Long Chen. It was Leng Yueyan. In the distance, the karmic hell flames retreated back toward purgatory. Who is he? The Nethergod looked at Long Chen with absolute shock. I don't know either. But the first time I saw him, I had a feeling that he would grow to a terrifying level. He is the only one I can rely on. With him, I can handle you. That's why I pursued him, to make him grow up faster, said Leng Yueyan. Leng Yueyan maintained a safe distance from the Nethergod. Who knew if the Nethergod would suddenly attack now that the danger had passed? Seeing her vigilance, the Nethergod shook her head. You don't need to be on guard. I chose the wrong path. I was the one who gambled and lost. This Netherworld is yours to oversee. Perhaps this world doesn't need me. The Nethergod faded into the void, shocking Leng Yueyan. She felt the Netherworld's laws converging toward her, submitting. The Nethergod had bestowed her own power to her. However, in her fading image, she seemed desolate. Long Chen's soul fell into endless darkness. Everything was deathly silent. Am I dead? Long Chen looked around at the darkness, feeling sorrowful. He had failed in the end. He hadn't managed to save Leng Yueyan or the Nethergod. He had died himself, and the Dragon Blood Legion would definitely be cut to half its number at least. He hadn't managed to resolve the mystery of his origins. He hadn't found his father and mother. He was forever gone from his brothers and sisters. Do you feel unresigned? Just at that moment, a woman appeared within the darkness. She was so beautiful that Long Chen forgot to breathe. However, her figure was clearly illusory. Who? Long Chen was startled. He had seen this woman twice before. The first time was in the Heaven Dragon Flame region, when he had just earned the second volume of the Nirvana scripture. She had appeared and said some curious words. The second time was in the Brahma Divine Palace. She had been talking to herself again, but at that time, Long Chen had felt great pain, as if the sight of her had triggered some memories buried deep within him. This time, he found that although she was illusory, there was no longer the feeling of being isolated by endless space and time. It felt like she was actually present. For some reason, Long Chen felt great pain upon seeing her. He couldn't hold back his emotions. Trying to remain as detached as possible, he asked, "Can I ask who you are?" The woman smiled. That smile made Long Chen feel like spring had returned, like flowers were blooming. All his anger, sadness, resentment at dying, they all faded. I am the master of those memories deep in your soul. You are the Pill Sovereign? Long Chen was shocked. The Pill Sovereign was actually a woman? The Pill Sovereign? I suppose. My soul is incomplete and shattered. It could only merge with you in a very limited manner, so you only have the very first initial memories of when I embarked on my Tao. When I reached sovereignty of the Pill Tao, I was 37. At that time, he was still 1 year younger than me. The woman was looking at Long Chen but was talking to herself, as if lost in her memories. Eventually, she sighed sadly and focused on Long Chen once more. I have 2 pieces of news for you, one good and one bad. Which do you want to hear first? Long Chen was surprised that the great Pill Sovereign would play a little game with him. Up to you. In any case, I will forever be hearing more bad news than good news. No, actually, I have 2 bits of good news for you this time. The first is that you haven't died. The woman smiled at him. I'm not dead? Great. I knew that you wouldn't let me die. Long Chen jumped up excitedly. If he wasn't dead, that meant that there was still hope. You're smart to use this method to arouse my discarnate will. Having done so, the second bit of good news is that you now have a chance to obtain the 3rd volume of Nirvana Scripture's Flame Control Arts and Immortal Divine Pill Refining Arts. The Flame Control Arts and Immortal Divine Pill Refining Arts of the 3rd volume of the Nirvana Scripture? Would a pill refined from such things be enough to allow someone to directly ascend into a god or immortal? Long Chen was filled with joy at this, but the woman continued. However, having used this extreme method to arouse my discarnate soul results in bad news as well. My discarnate soul is fading away. I no longer have the power to transmit those to you. You're going to disappear? Long Chen reached out to grab her, but his hands passed right through her. She was just an image, not a solid body. Seeing that Long Chen's first thought wasn't what he had just lost, but her smile vanished, replaced with a warm expression. You are him but you aren't him. Perhaps he is you, but you aren't him. Long Chen, if you learn one day that you were used, will you hate me? The woman reached out and held Long Chen's face. Long Chen could only feel a cold feeling but not her actual flesh. However, deep in his soul, he could feel her tender emotions. Long Chen shook his head. I won't hate you. I will never hate you. I like acting according to intuition. I don't need any further reason than that. The woman's smile returned. You're really the same as him when he was young. He didn't care about the consequences of his actions either. It was foolish enough to make someone hate him, but it made me love him unswervingly. The woman's figure began to fade away. She sighed sadly. Time is up? In this world, time is the strongest weapon. No one can stop it. As she vanished, she pressed a hand against Long Chen's forehead. A rune appeared on his forehead and merged into his soul. Chanting filled his head. However, this time, the chanting was a woman's voice. The soft but perfect chanting contained a certain emotion, one of sorrow at the world. Long Chen felt all the tension in his body be released. Flames runes whirled within his body. He felt like he was a ball of fire. Many aspects about controlling flames that he hadn't understood before were now perfectly clear to him. However, the chanting grew quieter until it stopped. It started again, only to fade away quickly. The darkness suddenly vanished. Long Chen found himself awake in a bed. Leng Yueyan was sitting beside him. Seeing him awake, she smiled. Were you dreaming? Why are you crying? Only then did Long Chen realize that tears filled his eyes. That illusory woman had made him feel forlorn when she had left. He hadn't thought that he would cry in his dreams. A bit embarrassed, he said, It's nothing. I thought that I was dead, so I cried. It's a good thing I wasn't so scared that I pissed myself instead. Long Chen. Leng Yuan suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him. Within her embrace, Long Chen's hands naturally wrapped around her slender waist. Leng Yuan suddenly laughed, blushing. There was a strange emotion in her voice. It's no longer your first time. Why are you acting like you have no experience? Long Chen was provoked and reached out to tear off her clothes. Leng Yuan's palm slammed into Long Chen's chest, blasting apart his black robes. Have you forgotten what I said? You, Long Chen, are fated to be subdued by me. Leng Yuan's hair flipped back. Her black dress transformed into black runes that slowly dissipated. Long Chen felt his body was about to collapse. Leng Yuan was like a wild leopardess. Long Chen didn't know how many times he had been tormented before being utterly spent and falling asleep. However, this time was better than last time. He finally experienced what it was supposed to feel like. But that feeling had lasted too long and for too many times. Even though Long Chen considered himself to have a strong body, he was almost exhausted to death. Long Chen had tried to free himself several times but had been suppressed by Leng Yuan. She had even summoned runic chains to bind his hands and feet. No matter how he struggled, he was unable to break those chains. He had tried to press Leng Yuan beneath him but had never succeeded. More exhausted than if he had fought an immense battle, Long Chen finally slept. After an unknown amount of time, Long Chen slowly woke. Leng Yuan was sleeping on his chest like a gentle cat, a sweet smile on her face. It was like a flower that had received the nourishment of rain and grew even more resplendent. As the beauty slept, for the first time, Long Chen stared peacefully at Leng Yuan from a close distance. At this time, Leng Yuan wasn't the slightest bit wild. She lay there warmly. Long Chen did a careful count of her eyelashes and eyebrows. They were identical in number and position. Her face was perfectly symmetrical. Although most people's faces looked symmetrical, they weren't perfectly so. If you looked closely, there would be many differences between the halves of their faces. Long Chen moved down from Leng Yuan's face. He saw her curves and silky skin. Some changes occurred with Long Chen's body without him noticing. Leng Yuan's eyes fluttered open. Long Chen hastily shut his eyes and feigned sleep. Suddenly, her giggling rang out in his ear. "Your body has sold you out." Long Chen blushed. He suddenly grabbed Leng Yuan's waist and pressed her down onto the bed. However, Leng Yuan laughed and slipped away. Standing in front of the bed, she stretched and yawned, fully revealing her body to Long Chen, making him feel like he was on fire. His blood flow quickened. "Hee, you want it? Beg me." Leng Yuan laughed as if she could read Long Chen's thoughts. Long Chen looked at Leng Yuan. She was normally icy, arrogant, an existence too high to blaspheme. But at this time, she was incredibly seductive. Long Chen felt like he was about to start burning. "Beg me. Go ahead." Leng Yuan leaned closer, her long hair framing her perfect face. She was even more charming now, making even Long Chen feel like his will was about to crumble. However, he clenched his teeth and refused to speak. Seeing him bitterly enduring, Leng Yuan laughed delightedly. Stiffly, Long Chen turned away, no longer looking at her. "Hee, as expected of my man. You're smart. Even if you begged, I wouldn't have given it to you." Leng Yuan giggled and snapped her finger. Black runes condensed around her from the feet up, transforming into her dress. Once her dress was on, her giggling stopped. Her smile slowly faded, and she once more became an icy and arrogant goddess. "Is it interesting for you to act like this?" Long Chen sat cross-legged on the bed without the slightest thread on his body. He hadn't begged because he understood Leng Yuan far too well. He could never get anything from her by begging. Instead, he would just be taunted. Leng Yuan said, "What's not interesting about it? It's true that I like you, but it's not like I would marry you like some normal mortal, nor did I say that you would be the only one. You are the first man that I, Leng Yuan, have subdued. What's that supposed to mean? You're going to look for more men?" Long Chen's expression turned cold. "Oh, is my man jealous? What a good feeling. But don't you feel that if you're able to get multiple women, I should be able to do the same?" Leng Yuan looked at Long Chen. "Of course not. You are my woman. In this life, you can only be my woman," declared Long Chen decisively. Leng Yuan smiled faintly. "If you want to be my only man, it's not out of the question. It'll just be up to your own abilities." "What does that mean?" demanded Long Chen. "You know that Ming Tsangyue and I are the gods of this netherworld. We are one. She has given me her god energy, but she is still the true body. Our power is forever balanced. As a result, our hearts were connected at that moment for eternity. She can feel everything I do, and I can feel everything she does. Perhaps I can consider having you be my only man, but what about her? If she finds her own man, I'd feel it when they're intimate. That feeling, it's very lifelike, said Ling Yuan deliberately. Long Chen turned green. If Ming Songyue found her own man, it would pull Ling Yuan as well? That was unacceptable. That's why, if you want to keep me forever, you better think of a way to subdue her. Ling Yuan leaned down and whispered into his ear. She kissed him on the cheek. Didn't I already do it? Long Chen felt a chill. Last time doesn't count because she wasn't willing. Furthermore, she was in a different world, separated from her divinity. However, if you could be together here, you would have fully subdued her. She would definitely be loyal to you. Then you wouldn't need to worry about anyone else, said Ling Yuan solemnly. Wasn't this crazy? To subdue an icy god was as difficult as defying the heavens. However, it didn't matter how difficult it was, Long Chen had to do it. He wouldn't allow another man to touch his woman, or even if it was just half of her. Long Chen stood and walked off the bed. Curiously, his clothes automatically appeared on his body. That was good. If he had to go talk to the Nethergod naked, perhaps she would kill him instantly. I want to know about her past, said Long Chen. That should make it easier. Her past was sealed by her. Even I don't know it, said Ling Yuan. Then what am I supposed to do? Demanded Long Chen hotly. I trust that you'll think of something. Ling Yuan nodded at him, giving him her optimistic support. As for Long Chen, he raged inside. But in any case, he had to try. He learned that Ming Songyue was currently at the highest point of the Nethergod Palace, the Divine Wind Eye. Long Chen walked over. The Divine Wind Eye was a giant observation platform. From there, it was possible to see far into the distance. Long Chen had only just climbed up when he felt some kind of energy support his own vision, allowing him to see further. Long Chen saw a world he had never seen before. It was very similar to the Martial Heaven continent. There were cities bustling with busy people. Long Chen had come to see Ming Songyue, but he was drawn in by this sight. He watched the people of that world go about their business. Why have you come here? Just at this moment, Ming Songyue's voice rang out behind him. Only then did he realize that she was standing beside him, looking in the direction that he was looking. Talk. Long Chen's mouth almost slipped. He almost said that he had come to seduce her. The reason he had an automatic urge to tell the truth was because she was a genuine god. Long Chen could clearly feel that she was different from Ling Yuan. She controlled a different kind of energy. Facing her was a very difficult thing. Ming Songyue didn't seem to sense anything. What is there to talk about? The victor is king, while the loser is cast away. If you gamble, you must be willing to lose. I planted this karma, so I reaped it. She won, I lost. I've already given her this world. She deserves it. You're wrong. How am I wrong? Ming Songyue turned to look at him. Long Chen looked into her eyes. Neither of you lost. Both of you won. I don't understand. Ming Songyue frowned slightly. Long Chen didn't directly reply. He instead asked, "Do you drink wine?" Seemingly surprised by Long Chen's sudden change in topic, she answered, "Occasionally." What does this have to do with drinking wine? Good, I also drink. Let's drink together. I'll tell you how you both won. Long Chen looked around and didn't see a place to sit. Ming Songyue waved her hand. Runes condensed into 2 chairs and a table. She sat, her gaze on Long Chen, seeming to be waiting for his answer. It seemed that there really was an opening. It was time to show off his skills. Long Chen was encouraged by her expectant gaze. Long Chen took out some wine bowls. Hesitating, he asked, "Do you have any good wine that I can try?" The Nethergod looked at Long Chen. Upon extending her hand, a delicate fist-sized jug appeared. However, she didn't pour it into Long Chen's bowl. Instead, she took out 2 small jade cups. They were so small that Long Chen felt that they could only contain the tiniest amount of wine. The Nethergod passed a cup to Long Chen. But before she could say anything, Long Chen had tossed the wine into his mouth. As soon as it touched his tongue, he spat it out and started coughing. The wine went flying toward Ming Songyue, but it parted around her. Long Chen violently coughed, like he was coughing out his tongue. He wanted to speak but was unable to say anything. Ming Songyue slowly smiled at Long Chen's wretched state. You. Long Chen only managed one word before succumbing to the violent coughs. Even tears squeezed out of his eyes. This wine was excruciatingly spicy. It was like lava exploding in his mouth, and the strangest thing about it was that it even invaded his soul. Long Chen had drunk spicy wines before. Tu Qianshang's wine in particular was strong in that aspect. However, even his wine was not like this. This didn't even feel like wine. It seemed more like poison. You drank it too fast. You can't blame me. Ming Songyue shook her head at Long Chen's furious gaze. This was definitely intentional. Long Chen was sure of it. She had had more than enough time to explain it while pouring the wine but hadn't, only acting like she wanted to say something when he was already swallowing it. Fine, this wine. Long Chen suddenly found that his voice had changed. It was rougher, like an old bull. Ming Songyue laughed. Feeling like she was lacking in propriety, she turned away. What is going on? Raged Long Chen. This voice was not his. It was incredibly ugly, like an old cow farting. Even he couldn't bear it. Just as Ming Songyue managed to suppress her laughter and look back, Long Chen's furious gaze made her laugh once more. Finally, Ming Songyue pointed a finger at Long Chen's throat. A cool and refreshing feeling blew away the burning feeling. Seeing that he was still angry, she said, "It truly is wine, and a high-grade wine of the divine level at that. I am normally only willing to drink a bit of it occasionally. But because you are a mortal, you cannot come into contact with that kind of energy, so it naturally burns your throat." "Are you sure you're not scamming me?" demanded Long Chen. He realized that his voice had returned to normal. "I'm sure." Ming Songyue nodded. "All right, goodbye." Long Chen nodded and rose. "Didn't you want to talk? You're leaving like this? Are you angry?" Ming Songyue was slightly curious. "If you're really angry and don't even have this little bit of endurance, how will you accomplish anything big?" Tis who said that I ever wanted to achieve something big. I wish I could be an old farmer with a group of wives to keep my bed warm. Hesitating, Long Chen sat back down. He hadn't accomplished his mission yet. "Let's keep talking. You can put away your cat piss wine. I'll give you some of my fine wine." Long Chen took out jugs of wines from his primal chaos space. Ming Songyue shook her head. "One mouthful of this divine wine is equivalent to decades of cultivation, but you aren't blessed enough to enjoy it. Wine is wine, while medicine is medicine. The former has its own realm to enjoy, while the latter must be taken for a goal. One is passive, one is active. Although this wine I've gathered is from the mortal world, it has manifested its own grand Tao. Even as a god in control of a whole world, some things can't be changed. For example, the heart can drag down mortals and gods with no distinction. All living things must traverse the sea of bitterness. All living things must traverse the sea of bitterness." Ming Songyue seemed to be affected by Long Chen's final sentence. "Here, first try this bowl of wine. If you are willing, you can dispel your god energy first and enjoy it with the attitude of a mortal. That will give you greater comprehension." Long Chen handed the wine bowl to her. Ming Songyue hesitated ever so slightly before a rune lit up on her forehead and then vanished. Long Chen clearly felt her aura change. She was no longer a supreme god but more like a true woman. Long Chen was startled inside. Ming Songyue had truly dispelled her god energy. That was a kind of trust in him. If he had been colluding with Leng Yueyin and attacked her together at this moment, she wouldn't be able to resist. Without realizing it, a new tender feeling appeared in his heart. Trust was something extremely hard to obtain. Although she was a god, due to the 9-star Hegemon body art, he was still able to sense the change in her emotions. Even he didn't understand this. When you drink it, let the wine pass through the two sides of your tongue and converge in your throat. Don't look at me like that, I'm not scamming you. Long Chen hastily raised his hands in innocence upon seeing Ming Songyue look at him warily. Ming Songyue was naturally wary after how angry he had been when she had offered him wine. Was this payback? But then thinking about it, she found it laughable. How could something from the mortal world harm her? She allowed the wine to enter her mouth according to Long Chen's method. Curiously, the wine was like clear water when it touched the tip of her tongue, then when passing by the two sides of her tongue, it gradually unleashed its flavor before finally converging at her throat. She was surprised to find that when the two streams converged, a new flavor appeared. Although the flavor of the wine wasn't very strong, she reflected upon it for a long time. She had never drunk such a wine. Good wine, praised Ming Songyue. This wine is called Rouge Red. It's a very, very ordinary 100-flower wine. When it enters the mouth, the wine energy is slowly released. The left side gives birth to sweetness, while the right side gives birth to bitterness. They advance together and then merge, reflecting the union of yin and yang. That is the essence of this wine, explained Long Chen. Ming Songyue drank another mouthful after hearing this. She experienced those sensations that she hadn't noticed the first time. It was true, the left side was sweet and the right side was bitter. When they merged, a new flavor was born. The divine world's fine wines weren't really wine, they were medicinal wine. The fine aspect about them referred to their medicinal effect, not taste. Actually, the finer the wine, the worse it tasted. I didn't expect that I would be a frog at the bottom of a well. The mortal world actually possesses such fine wines. Why would anyone dream of becoming a god or immortal with such a wine? Ming Songyue sighed emotionally. Long Chen clapped his hands in praise. Miss Songyue, this question is excellent. Let's discuss it in a bit. Please try this wine. Long Chen handed over another bowl of wine. This wine was golden like honey, but it gave off a refreshing scent. How am I supposed to drink it this time? Asked Ming Songyue. With your mouth. Ming Songyue laughed. How else? I meant if there was anything special. No. Drink it however you please. Ming Songyue drank the wine and was instantly overwhelmed by a burst of flavor. However, when she tasted it carefully, there was a trace of bitterness within the sweetness. Following that, Long Chen gave her another bowl of wine. Ming Songyue drank it and frowned due to the bitterness. What do you feel? Asked Long Chen. The first bowl of this wine had a hint of bitterness within its sweetness, but the second bowl was full of bitterness, said Ming Songyue. Long Chen smiled. The first bowl is bitterness within sweetness, while the second bowl is sweetness within bitterness. Why didn't I sense such a thing? Demanded Ming Songyue. Long Chen didn't reply. He handed over another bowl of wine. When Ming Songyue drank this bowl, she finally sensed that trace of sweetness. Long Chen finally explained, "This is why I said that there are still many principles that are the same for both mortals and gods." Those 3 bowls of wine were the same. To tell the truth, I was also puzzled just like you. Compared to bitterness, we prefer sweetness. A trace of bitterness within sweetness is easily sensed. But the slightest sweetness within bitterness is easily overlooked. When we are in pain, we turn a blind eye to things we find negligible. When we are happy, disagreeable things are easily noticed. Our sense of taste is the same as our perceptions. Our own desires trick us into this misperception. Ming Songyue pondered this explanation. Long Chen continued, "Let's not discuss all that right now. Let's keep trying more wine. Every one of these wines possesses its own realm. If you like it, I want you to tell me a story about this next wine." This was the 4th wine. Ming Songyue's thoughts were all over the place as if she didn't have time to consider each wine. When she saw the 4th wine, she was startled. There were 2 kinds of energy intertwining within the wine. What kind of wine is this? The yin and yang harmonious merger wine. The yin and yang harmonious merger wine? Why did that sound almost lecherous? Yin and yang coming together? Ming Songyue stared at Long Chen. Long Chen smiled. This wine's name might sound a bit off in that sense, but it's not like you imagine. This wine was created by a master of the Wine God Palace. His position in the Wine God Palace was only second to the High Priest. He rarely came out, and even Long Chen had only seen him twice. Ming Songyue was clearly suspicious that this was one of those lover wines. When Long Chen said its name in particular, his expression became a bit wretched, increasing her suspicions. However, when she thought about it, Something from the mortal world couldn't harm her even with her suppressing her god energy. Being stared at, Long Chen could only cough awkwardly. How could he explain something like that? An explanation would be covering it up and accepting that it was true. Long Chen could only indicate with his hand to drink. Ming Songyue took a sip of the wine. Two different streams of energy danced on her tongue, creating an indescribable feeling. This yin and yang harmonious merger wine is very miraculous. You can test it. Drink 3 mouthfuls, each bigger than the last, said Long Chen. Ming Songyue drank according to his method. The wine energy grew, forming powerful waves inside her mouth. The combination of yin and yang refreshed her mind. This wine was created by a master of the wine community. There are 50 formulas for creating it, but in reality, you can only taste 49 of them. One of them was lost in the process of making the wine, said Long Chen. Why is that? Ming Songyue did not understand how that was possible. Long Chen smiled. It seemed that gods cultivated a completely different path and weren't aware of the storytelling scams of the human race. He solemnly said, there are 50 paths, but only 49 can be used. The cosmos is incomplete. Heaven and earth are not full. It is precisely due to this that the myriad Daos can exist and evolve. A bottle filled with beans packed so tightly that they cannot move becomes dead, but if a portion of the beans is taken out, then the remaining ones can freely move. When they move, the world within the bottle is alive. Then the bottles can fill up a vat, and in the same principle, the bottles must have their own space to move. Above wine bottles and wine vats are wine cellars and wine houses, all growing bigger until it reaches the stars, the cosmos. The principle never changes. Going the opposite way, the cosmos contains the movements of space and time, as well as everything in between. How can they move? Precisely because a bit is missing, they are constantly able to change. There is no such thing as absolute perfection in this world because perfection is dead. Ming Songyue stood without realizing it, her eyes shining. Long Chen's words had struck a chord within her. The knot inside her heart started to unravel. Things that she hadn't been able to see before became clear. Long Chen was pleased by her reaction. This principle and others were all the 9-star Hegemon Body Art's intuition. The 9-star Hegemon Body Art was like its own scale capable of measuring the boundless universe. He was quite delighted to see that even a god could be won over by what he spouted. Come sit. Let's talk more. Long Chen drank as much wine as Ming Songyue did, so he personally experienced the effects. Being able to keep up with a god roused his courage, and he pulled her down. Surprisingly, she really did obediently sit down. Taking the bowl he gave her, she toasted with him and drank. Thank you. The essence of this theory of yours has truly benefited me, said Ming Songyue. She was unable to imagine how someone from a mortal world could say something even more thought-provoking than immortal scriptures and divine canons. Long Chen's theory was plain and easy to understand, but in reality, when she thought it over, it contained endless marvels that made her sigh. Long Chen switched out the wines again, toasting with her. Let's first drink before going back to the question you asked. The question I asked? Ming Songyue was startled. Without her realizing it, her face was starting to turn rosy from the wine. Have you forgotten? You asked why someone would dream of becoming a god or immortal when there exists such fine wine in the mortal world. Right, I did say that. Ming Songyue smiled, taking the initiative to actually pour wine for Long Chen. She looked at him expectantly. It seemed she very much enjoyed drinking and chatting with Long Chen. Long Chen was ecstatic. A god had personally poured wine for him. That was enough for him to brag for a lifetime. This time, let me offer a toast to your learning and comprehension. Ming Songyue raised her bowl. Cheers. Long Chen laughed and toasted. Long Chen felt the wine starting to get to him. He stealthily looked at Ming Songyue, seeing she didn't have much of a change other than being a bit rosier. If this continued, he would lose badly in alcohol tolerance. Unacceptable. She had already released her god energy. How was she able to drink so much? Long Chen had come prepared. These wines were all meticulously picked out. Although when drinking them, they didn't seem very strong. When combined, their effect was incredible. Even Longchen didn't dare to drink this much normally. He was starting to be unable to bear it. He had once drunk this wine with Gu Yang and the others, and as a result, they had collapsed after just one bowl of it, not waking for 3 days. However, Ming Songyue had drunk a dozen jugs of it and was still fine. I can't continue like this. She's going to crush me. He saw Ming Songyue pouring more wine. It seemed she wanted to keep drinking and drinking. This time, when Longchen drank, he activated the primal chaos space, sending the wine inside. But on the outside, it looked as if he drank it. I've toasted to you with 3 bowls of wine now. It can count as an apology for my hot-headedness. Let's keep talking about our previous topic, said Ming Songyue. It seemed that this toast was an apology for the divine wine she had taken out. Longchen took out another jug of wine and poured. I previously said that this question of yours was excellent. I wasn't sweet-talking. You hit the nail right on the head and found the foundation of every living being. What foundation? Desire. Longchen put the wine jug to the side and didn't continue drinking. Even if he was sending the wine into the primal chaos space, some of it was still released when it entered his mouth. He had to slow down. Desire isn't good or bad, but many people think of it in a negative way. Desire is what pushes us forward. It gives us a thirst to explore the true meaning of life. But when desire has no limits from reason, it will explode and consume someone. For a mortal, the basic desires are having enough food to eat and having a warm bed. After that, they'll desire not having to worry about basic necessities. After that, they'll want more and more, to become a noble, to become emperor, to never die. Longchen intentionally paused and drank a mouthful of wine. Enthralled, Ming Songyue asked, "What's after never dying?" After never dying is courting death in as fancy a way as possible. Ming Songyue smiled. Are you giving me a roundabout curse? As Nethergod, she was undying. But to break through to a new level, she had split herself up. Was that courting death in a fancy way? Longchen also smiled. I wouldn't dare. I just meant that people's desires are endless. After satisfying one desire, a new one will appear. It creates one goal after another. Both humans and gods have desires, and so they have goals. However, many people are overwhelmed by their desires and see only their goals, neglecting many other important things. What important things? Longchen switched wines, and Ming Songyue drank a bowl of it. He looked into her eyes. Yes. That thing is called happiness. Mingyue, can I ask you, are you happy? Happy? Ming Songyue stared at him. Her eyes reddened with emotion. She seemed to be recalling something from the past that had hurt her. Killing intent began to brew in her eyes. Longchen jumped. If her killing intent manifested, her god energy would return. All his previous efforts would then be for nothing. Let's go. I'll bring you to do some happy stuff. Longchen changed the subject, grabbing her hand and rushing off. Where are you bringing me? You don't even know this place. Ming Songyue was following along as Longchen pulled her flying off the tower, but she didn't know what he was thinking. There's a city over there. Let's go have some fun. Longchen pointed at a city in the distance. That's Miluo City, a residence for the Netherworld's regular people. What's interesting about that place? Also, even though it looks close, there are 3 separate spaces between us. For you, it would take at least 3 years of travel to get there. Ming Songyue frowned slightly. What? It's that far. But you definitely have a way though. Longchen was startled, but then he smiled. Seeing his expectant look, she didn't feel good about declining. Ming Songyue waved her hand, and runes condensed into a portal. When they came out, they were within a bustling city. Longchen looked back and saw that the portal had vanished. Furthermore, he was unable to see the bone tower they had been at just now. Immortals and mortals are separate. You can't see the tower from here through the 3 spaces. These people can't see us either, said Ming Songyue. What are the 3 spaces? Asked Longchen. The 3 spaces refer to 3 voids. The void of the heavenly Daos, the void of the world's barrier, and the void of life. I've tested these 3 voids before, and they're quite mystical. They separate the netherworld from the mortal world. Gods can descend to mortal worlds, but for mortals to pass through the three voids requires ascension. After ascending, they can't return. The three voids separate their past and future. Only I, the ruler of the netherworld, can freely pass. Even Leng Yueyan is unable to reach this place, said Ming Zhangyue. Long Chen was startled. Does this mean that the three voids are the final barrier of the martial heaven continent's experts? Once broken through, you ascend into a god or immortal. Ming Zhangyue shook her head. That's not the same. I've gone to your martial heaven continent. The laws are completely different. The martial heaven continent has its own heroic spirits protecting it. Even for me, I must strip away the majority of my divine energy to enter. Otherwise, back then, Ming Zhangyue stopped there, and Long Chen felt a burning sensation on his face. He knew what she was referring to. However, he acted like he hadn't heard it. What are those heroic spirits? Even you must be afraid of it? Was it a sovereign? No, that was impossible. How could a sovereign threaten a god? If they were that powerful, how could they all be dead? I'm not sure. Their power is connected to the laws of the martial heaven continent. If I wish to set foot on the continent, I must follow their rules. Let me put it to you this way. The martial heaven continent is no ordinary continent. I've observed it for a long time, and I suspect it is the core of a star field, said Ming Zhangyue. The core of a star field? What is that? This world is far vaster than you can imagine. A single star can give rise to life, while it itself is also alive. After thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of stars link up, they form their own trajectory and become a star field. They move according to a set rhythm, and the one in charge of that rhythm is the core. It must be a powerful star. However, it seems that the martial heaven continent is not a complete core. It has been badly damaged and seems to be on the verge of collapsing. Despite that, it still possesses its own powerful laws that even I must obey. Long Chen had not expected the martial heaven continent to be such an existence. Was the damage to it referring to the battle of the immortal era? For a battle to damage the very core of a star field, just what level of experts had fought back then? They had gotten off topic. They couldn't continue like this because Long Chen saw that Ming Zhangyue was starting to throw off the effects of the wine. Let's not talk about this. Do you know why I brought you here? I was the one who brought you here, corrected Ming Zhangyue. Cough, if you put it that way, Fine, you're right. Long Chen wanted to argue, but he found he had no ground to stand on. Ming Zhangyue smiled at his awkwardness and found him to be interesting. She felt relaxed around him as if she could be free from restrictions. Let's go comprehend the truth about life. Long Chen grabbed Ming Zhangyue's hand. She hesitated for a moment, but in the end, decided not to fight his hand. She walked alongside him. They reached city gates with 3 cursive characters written on top of them. Long Chen didn't recognize them. Miluo City. Yup, these 3 characters were written decently, but they clearly lack some force. Long Chen nodded as he walked through. Ming Zhangyue laughed. These are the Zhangyang gates. Long Chen's expression stiffened. He had an urge to slap himself. His urge to act all-knowing had ended up losing him even more face. However, just who was Long Chen? His skin was thicker than the city walls. Of course I know these are the Zhangyang gates. I just feel like this grand Miluo city must not have a decent calligrapher to write it so badly. Ming Zhangyue didn't quibble with him. She only looked at him with a knowing smile. Long Chen pretended not to see that look. This place was quite similar to the martial heaven continent. There were many cultivators around. However, their auras were different from the people of the martial heaven continent. Despite that, Long Chen was still able to estimate their power. Based on his estimates, the strongest people here were only comparable to soul transformation experts. They were unable to threaten him. However, as he walked through the streets, more and more curious gazes turned toward him, making him feel out of place. Do they recognize me as an outsider? Your cultivation base is higher than theirs, so they can't tell what level you are. As for me, they can't even see me, said Ming Zhangyue. Long Chen suddenly realized what the issue was. He was holding Ming Songyue's hand, but if she was invisible to them, his walking posture must seem unnatural to them. Don't mess around. Otherwise, others will think I'm crazy, complained Long Chen. Ming Songyue smiled and materialized herself to these mortals. She was especially conspicuous in her black dress. It seemed that the mortal world had never given rise to such a dress. As for Long Chen, he was wearing black robes that matched her dress. The two of them continued down the streets, looking at their surroundings. Long Chen said, "Everyone is hustling for their own goals. It's all due to their desires. Every person has different goals and is fighting for them. A commoner and an emperor both have their own goals to strive for. But many people don't even know what they're working for. Only a few people can take a pause and ask themselves what they're doing. Then have you asked yourself?" Yes. I often ask myself over and over again, why do I live? Then what's your answer? I live to make sure the people I love and the people who love me can be at peace and happy, said Long Chen. Ming Songyue was drawn in by Long Chen's gaze at that moment. Her heartbeat quickened without her sensing it. There seemed to be a burning flame within his eyes. It made her tense up and feel at a loss as to what to do. The two of them continued and experienced the things this world had to offer. They forgot about their cultivation bases, merging into this busy world. At the start, Ming Songyue was clearly ill at ease. But as Long Chen guided her, she gradually forgot about her status as a god, using the viewpoint of an ordinary person to view this world. A supreme god was a lonely existence, while the mortal world was like a nest of ants in her eyes. She had never paid much attention to them. However, today she was walking through the mortal world, and she found that it wasn't as inferior as she had imagined. She also saw the emotions of the mortal world. She saw a girl holding candy that tripped. Her candy became covered in mud and couldn't be eaten. The girl's mother scolded her as she took out 3 coins from a wrinkled-up purse, buying her a new stick of candy. Seeing how delighted the girl became, Ming Songyue stared silently for a long time. Long Chen said, "Those were the only coins she had. Perhaps buying that stick of candy means that she'll have to go hungry tonight. But in her eyes, the happiness of that girl is the most important thing. Perhaps it's foolish to others. Those 3 coins could buy a dozen buns to keep them full for a day. But sometimes life is just like that. A shoe only fits on the right foot, and happiness can only be realized by yourself. What's wrong?" Long Chen suddenly saw that Ming Songyue had started crying. He reached out and wiped away her tears. Ming Songyue didn't say anything. She allowed him to wipe away her tears. Even afterward, she didn't say anything. Long Chen knew that he was doomed. The wine's effect had completely faded. He didn't know what he could use to pluck her heartstrings. Her god energy was slowly returning, so she would no longer be able to maintain the attitude of a mortal. Ming Songyue didn't wish to continue strolling the streets, so she brought Long Chen to a mountain outside the city. After that, she stood beside a waterfall, watching the water crash down for a long time before speaking. "Long Chen, I have one question for you. On that day when you jumped, did you think about me?" Long Chen was first startled by this question, but he then nodded. Seeing him nod, ripples of emotions appeared in Ming Songyue's eyes. She actually leaned against his neck and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Tell me, how much were you thinking about me and how much were you thinking about her?" asked Ming Songyue, her eyes closed. Long Chen shook his head. "I wasn't thinking that much. All I was thinking was that I couldn't let either of you die. I had to save both of you. Both of you are my women, and if either one of you died, I'd be in enough pain to die." This time, Long Chen had no intention of shaking her emotions. He was telling the truth. If Ming Songyue died, Leng Yueyan would die with her. Furthermore, he had always felt guilty toward Ming Songyue, as well as another unclear emotion. "Long Chen, kiss me." Ming Songyue suddenly turned red and looked up at Long Chen. There were still some tears on her face. Although she looked the same as Leng Yueyan, Long Chen could clearly feel her inner heart. At this moment, she was not a god. She had thrown away all her pretenses, becoming a girl needing love. The two of them immersed themselves in each other. Ming Zongyue's black robes transformed into black runes that formed a tent around the two of them. For the first time, Long Chen felt a warm feeling. Ming Zongyue wasn't being forceful like Leng Yuan. Instead, she was deferring to Long Chen. After their happy time together, Long Chen lay on the ground, an arm around Ming Zongyue's waist. "Are you afraid of me running off?" Ming Zongyue smiled lightly, lying against his chest like a cat. "I feel like I'm dreaming. Once I wake up, the dream might be gone," sighed Long Chen. He didn't feel like this was real. "It truly does feel like a dream." "Gods also dream?" asked Long Chen curiously. "Weren't you the one who said that sometimes gods and mortals are the same?" Ming Zongyue nuzzled into Long Chen's neck. "Long Chen, thank you. You've allowed me to comprehend many things. However, aren't you worried that Ling Yuan will have an opinion about this? What will she do if she finds out in the future?" Let her find out," said Long Chen indifferently. Inside, he thought to himself that she had been the one to tell him to seduce her. "Hold it in the future? Aren't the two of you able to sense each other?" demanded Long Chen suddenly. "Sense each other? How could that be possible? Although we were once one, in order to hide from me, she severed our bond, making our souls separate. We can't sense each other," said Ming Zongyue. So Leng Yuan had scammed him. Long Chen suddenly realized that he had been duped. He sighed, part angry and part happy. Just what was Leng Yuan up to? "Long Chen," Ming Zongyue started to say something but then shut her mouth. "Never mind." "What is it?" asked Long Chen. "Don't ask. I don't want to bring you karma. But I should warn you that you possess something that has the power to destroy worlds. That kind of power might come from one thing, a certain cultivation technique. However, people with that kind of power always have troubled fates. Sometimes even rumbling suddenly rang out from heaven and earth. Ming Zongyue shut her mouth immediately and only then did the rumbling fade. Ming Zongyue looked at Long Chen. Long Chen was already dumbfounded. Not even a god could say it? Just what kind of karma was that? What did that karma stem from? The Nirvana scripture? The 9-star hegemon body art? The primal chaos bead? Or the azure dragon essence blood? Some things can't be spoken. Even going in a roundabout manner has been sensed. "I'm sure that you're smart enough to figure it out sooner or later," said Ming Zongyue. She waved her hand, dispelling the black runes around them and revealing the clear sky. She held onto Long Chen warmly as they got up. Long Chen still felt like he was in a dream. Her change in attitude was somewhat unbelievable to him. Ming Zongyue and Leng Yuan were both arrogant and lofty people. Compared to Ming Zongyue, Leng Yuan was actually friendly. Due to being a ruler of a world, Ming Zongyue had always given people an innate feeling of reverence. However, now Long Chen felt that it was Ming Zongyue that was warmer and closer to him, while Leng Yuan was the domineering aloof one. "Do you know why Leng Yuan likes control?" asked Ming Zongyue as if she could read his thoughts. Long Chen shook his head. "It's because at the very start, when I split my soul to create her, I gave her my trace of goodness. I wanted to erase that bit of goodness, so I sent her into the corrupt path, having her face merciless slaughter. I hoped that her goodness would be destroyed within that despair and bloodiness. However, I was too foolish. Just as you said, a person consumed by their desires becomes blind. When Leng Yuan awakened her bone sword, she already sensed my existence. As she grew, she noticed more and more things that were wrong. She began to search for opportunities to fight me. She hunted down the corrupt path's geniuses in hopes of finding a peerless genius who could grow along with her to fight against me. In the end, she found you, but then she ended up falling in love with you. Love also makes a person foolish. She was unwilling to draw you into our struggle and gave up on hunting you down. However, fate is difficult to control. In the end, the three of us were still tightly wound around each other. But Leng Yuan started out as a fragment of myself that I split off. She was constantly in a weaker position, so she needs absolute control to make her feel safe," said Ming Zongyue. No wonder Leng Yuan had done what she had done. She had always been trying to reverse the tides and gain control. A portal appeared. Ming Zongyue and Long Chen stepped inside, reappearing on the top of the tower. The table and seats and even the wine jugs were still there. Ming Songyue smiled. Do you wish to continue drinking and discussing the Tao? All that I said was just nonsense. I was just bragging. Songyue, since we're now so close, can you tell me how my brothers and sisters are doing? This was the important question. He had been apart from the Dragonblood Legion for a long time now. He didn't know how they were. Don't worry. The first half of the Netherpassage path isn't dangerous. It's the second half, and then the final pass. Why has someone come to the Nethergod Palace? Let's go take a look. Ming Songyue pulled Long Chen away. The two of them entered the Nethergod Palace to see Ling Yuan sitting on the Nethergod's throne, gazing coldly at 7 people in front of her. Her gaze was frighteningly chilly. The 7 of them were startled when Long Chen and Ming Songyue walked in. Their leader was a man in violet robes and a black crown. This man had black runes whirling within his eyes that seemed to contain their own cosmos. Black chi enveloped him, making him look like an emperor of darkness. Just standing there, he was extremely imposing. A mortal? Where did he come from? Barked that man. His voice was like thunder, and Long Chen felt like his soul would be torn apart. Ming Songyue placed a hand on his back, and the feeling faded. Long Chen's expression gradually returned to normal. This was another god? Long Chen guessed he was someone on the same level as a Nethergod. He even had a similar aura to a Nethergod. It's not important where he's from. What's important is, what does it have to do with you? Sneered Ming Songyue. You violated the laws of the Netherworld to pick someone out of the human's Netherpassage path? The man furiously pointed at Long Chen. What does it have to do with you? Repeated Ming Songyue indifferently. The man turned dark-faced. He looked from Ming Songyue to Leng Yuan, and then finally Long Chen. This time, Long Chen saw a hint of jealousy. Crazy jealousy. Long Chen suddenly understood. Just at that moment, Leng Yuan announced, Hong Yaoyang, I will not be accepting your proposal, so you can go now. The man called Hong Yaoyang angrily said, Just which one of you is the true body? Which one of you has the authority to make decisions? You don't need to worry about it. In any case, there's no need to discuss your proposal any longer. Don't waste everyone's precious time, said Leng Yuan coldly. What about you? Hong Yaoyang turned to Ming Songyue. Ming Songyue held Long Chen's hand, indifferently saying, Her opinions are my opinions. You should go, otherwise today, my Songyue Netherworld will become forbidden land for you. If you provoke me, don't blame me for becoming hostile. Seeing Ming Songyue holding Long Chen's hand, Hong Yaoyang's eyes turned scarlet like a furious lion. Ming Songyue, you don't know kindness when you see it. Hong Yaoyang let out a furious roar that shook the palace. His figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Long Chen. His hand reached out to his throat. However, before he could touch Long Chen, Leng Yuan raised her hand. The Nethergod order appeared, and a ray of light bound Hong Yaoyang. The restrictions of the laws of the Netherworld made him unable to move. Without even thinking about it, Long Chen slapped Hong Yaoyang in the face. You shameless old thing, did I ever provoke you? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.